Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 1 of our story. If you like this what if story and want to see part 2, let me know in the comments below. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Also, check the description for more great content and my playlist. This story was posted by skullslime on Wattpad. Now let's start. Izuku's body bore the marks of his years spent in the forest. He had a deep appreciation for eating, fighting, his wolves, training, his future relationships, singing, and his family. Conversely, he had a strong dislike for arrogant individuals, those who harmed his wolves, intruders in his territory, and anyone who attempted to take away what he cherished, including his stepfather. Izuku possessed remarkable abilities. He was incredibly flexible, had an extraordinary amount of stamina, could fight without weapons, and had enhanced hearing, smell, speed, and strength. His arsenal included swords and his loyal wolves. His quirks were diverse and powerful. One allowed him to heal minor injuries and rejuvenate stamina using light, while another enabled him to travel through shadows and pull others into them for later retrieval. He could also split his body to create duplicates or combine into a larger, stronger wolf. Additionally, he had control over ice, using it for armor and projectiles, and could manipulate BLD for various purposes, making it either liquid or solid. His werewolf quirk allowed him to transform into a giant wolf or take on a more human form. Whenever Izuku inhaled, it resonated like a wolf's howl. His abilities included sensing movements within a 5-mile radius, swinging his sword in a frenzy to render projectiles ineffective, moving forward at blinding speed to inflict major damage, and executing powerful slashes that could cut through anything or create dust clouds. He could also send out air projectiles with angled swings and spin in a circle to shred anything in his path. After being struck by lightning, he could imbue his sword with electric energy, and he could circle around his prey at incredible speeds, relentlessly attacking. Izuku had forbidden forms as well. One 𝗬𝗲𝗄 made his blades cold as ice, causing his victims excruciating pain, while 𝗏𝗏 generated heat to ignite his blades, though he risked freezing if he didn't find warmth quickly. His ultimate forbidden form, Ragnarok, was a mystery. Class 1A, including Moroha, Setsuna, and Towa, had just finished the sports festival and were heading to the headquarters of the WWP to enhance their quirks. Aizawa instructed everyone to exit the bus, and Mineta urgently asked about the restrooms. Momo expressed surprise at the joint training with Class 1B, which Aizawa confirmed. Just then, the Wild Pussycats, the renowned pro-hero team, made their entrance, celebrated for their rescue skills and teamwork. Today marked their 12th anniversary. Pixie Bob playfully teased Izumi, squeezing her face, while Mandalay directed the group to run the rest of the way to their training camp. The students were incredulous at the distance they had to cover, and Pixie Bob assured them it was just extra training. As apprehension spread, Kirishima and Siro shouted for everyone to hurry back to the bus as the ground trembled ominously beneath them. Mandalay warned that those who didn't make it by 12:30 would miss lunch, adding a sense of urgency. The students were encouraged to use their quirks as they navigated through the beast forest, which Siro likened to a video game. Ida rallied everyone to move quickly, and they set off with renewed determination. Meanwhile, Mineta sought a private spot but encountered a fearsome earth golem, causing him to panic. As the creature raised its rocky claw, Shoto swiftly encased it in ice, while Izumi shattered the frozen remains with a powerful punch. Just as they thought they had the situation under control, another golem emerged, but Katsumi unleashed a fiery blast, sending it crashing into a tree. Shoto thanked his sister, and soon more earth golems appeared. Bakugo and Katsumi unleashed their explosive powers, reducing the golems to rubble. Class 1A fought bravely against the relentless onslaught, with Mina using her corrosive acid to immobilize one of the creatures. The battle continued as they faced the unexpected threat together. Izumi theorized that it was likely Pixie Bob's doing, as her quirk allowed her to manipulate the earth in various ways. He narrowly dodged another attack from an unyielding golem. Kendo, with determination, enlarged her fist and smashed the golem squarely in the face, causing its rocky exterior to shatter and crumble. Momo urged the group to keep moving, and the class raced toward the facility, continuing to fend off 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗏's earth monsters. Meanwhile, deep within the shadowy depths of the forest, a powerful roar echoed. A muscular teenager wearing a black wolf mask had just defeated another earth golem. He shouted about intruders entering his territory, vowing to confront them. As he entered a fighting stance, the haunting sound of a wolf howling reverberated through the trees, hinting at the fierce nature of the beast within him. The teen murmured about his technique, shutting his eyes to attune himself to the world around him. He felt the gentle rustle of leaves, heard the vibrant songs of birds, and sensed the determined march of ants on the forest floor. In this meditative state, he sensed an intrusion. His awareness sharpened as he detected a group of figures launching their assault on the last of the earth golems, their sights set on a peculiar structure in the distance. With adrenaline coursing through him, he called out to his pack to chase after the intruders. Back with the UA students, the air was thick with tension. Kendo scanned the group, concern etched on her face as she asked if everyone was all right. The students nodded, relief evident in their expressions. Ida noted their luck in being together, acknowledging that they would have been in serious trouble if they had overused their quirks. Monoma, hiding behind a sturdy tree, smugly remarked that even Class 1A needed help, proving Class 1B's superiority. Kendo playfully teased him about his cowardice, watching as his color drained from his face. Momo brightened the atmosphere by exclaiming that she saw light ahead. They soon arrived at the facility, where Aizawa, WWP, and Vlad King awaited them, relief washing over their tired faces. Aizawa remarked on their safe arrival just as an earth golem lumbered into view behind them, a reminder of the lurking threat. 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗏 confidently prepared to eliminate the creature, but before she could act, it exploded into jagged pieces, scattering debris. A guttural voice interrupted their moment, declaring that they were trespassing. The masked teen stood there, surrounded by his snarling wolves, their eyes blazing with fierce loyalty. 𝗧𝗏 questioned if he was part of the training, uncertainty in his tone. Mandalay announced their intent to arrest the intruders, her voice firm as she raised her hands for a standoff. The UA students instinctively prepared for a fight, the tension thick in the air. Vlad King warned them to comply, but the teen charged forward, swords glinting ominously in the light, his wolves racing alongside him, declaring his intent to crush them. Aizawa shouted a warning as he narrowly evaded the ferocious black wolf barreling toward him. The sleek white wolf charged at Vlad King, who hastily attempted to ensnare it. The students squared off against the imposing teenager. Kendo strategized, urging her classmates to come up with a plan. Just then, Kirishima and Tetsu charged forward, their voices unified in determination. They activated their quirks, but the air filled with a haunting wolf howl that sent a chill down their spines. The teen bellowed his technique, moving his sword forward with a fluid motion. The astonished students felt the rush of air as he maneuvered behind them, causing them to crash to the ground in surprise. As they struggled to regain their footing, Kirishima noticed their clothes were slightly torn. Before he could boast, they felt a sudden pain as BLD burst forth from their wounds. The teen declared his confidence, effortlessly slicing through a menacing pillar of ice hurled toward him. Todoroki acknowledged the teenager's sharp instincts. The Bakugo twins shouted in unison, igniting a powerful explosion aimed directly at their opponent. The teen responded with calm precision, swinging his swords with ferocity. A protective dome of energy formed around him, shredding the explosions into harmless fragments. He charged toward the twins, deftly slicing through each blast they sent his way. In an instant he appeared before them, bringing his swords down in a devastating arc. They barely had time to react before a long tongue shot out, ensnaring his arms and swinging him into a nearby tree. Bakugo yelled at the teenager with a fierce scowl, while Tsuyu chimed in, ever the supportive ally. Quickly surrounding their opponent while he was down, Ida led the charge, but to their shock, the teen stood up as if unharmed. Urgently, he instructed his classmates to restrain his movement using their quirks before he could attack. Mineta hurled his sticky ball, while Ibra summoned her vines to ensnare him. The Todoroki twins unleashed their chilling ice, and Ochako levitated boulders, combining their efforts in a powerful onslaught. Just as it seemed they would overwhelm him, a chilling howl filled the air. The teen cried out, invoking his technique, and with a single sweeping motion, he effortlessly tore through all the attacking projectiles, rendering them ineffective. Zero, disbelief etched on his face, wondered who this formidable opponent was. At that moment, the teen spun around, alerted by the distressing yelps of his wolves, now trapped and unable to move. Seizing the opportunity, Zero lunged forward, grasping the sword that the teen had been wielding. Triumphantly, he announced that he had the sword, and Yosetsu quickly joined him, using his quirk to secure the weapon against a sturdy tree. Monoma, hiding behind a nearby tree, mocked their efforts, claiming that the teen could do nothing without his sword. But before he could gloat further, the teen darted toward him, swiftly grabbing him by the face and slamming him into the ground with a heavy thud. With disdain in his eyes, he scoffed at Monoma before turning his attention to the remaining students. Cracking his knuckles, he grinned, ready for the impending confrontation, and taunted them to bring it on. The students charged at him, adrenaline coursing through their veins, but Aizawa's warning reached them too late. He shouted for them to wait, but the teen roared his technique, striking the ground with tremendous force and sending a massive dust cloud billowing into the air, obscuring their vision. As the dust began to settle, Bakugo cursed under his breath and blasted away the haze. When the dust cleared, only 7 of them remained: Bakugo, his sister Izumi, Aizawa, Mandalay, Vlad King, and Pixie Bob. The sight around them was staggering. Most of their classmates lay unconscious. The teen taunted them, claiming he was getting bored and that they were not strong enough. The Bakugo twins exchanged furious looks, their tempers flaring at his insult, and sprang into action simultaneously. Aizawa tried to warn them as he engaged his quirk against the teen, but his attempts seemed futile. As the Bakugo siblings attacked, the teenager responded with a powerful roundhouse kick to Bakugo's face and a gut punch to Katsumi, sending them both sprawling to the ground, groaning in pain. Aizawa commanded Vlad King and Pixie Bob to limit the teen's movements. Vlad King shot hardened BLD in their foe's direction while Pixie Bob softened the ground beneath the teen's feet, thwarting his mobility. Frustration mounted as the teen barely evaded another attack from Vlad's BLD. He noticed something amiss and scanned his surroundings until a flash of red caught his eye. There, atop a tree, he spotted a hint of crimson along the trunk. A smirk crossed his face as he made his way toward her location. Aizawa gasped, realizing the danger, and raced after him. The teen swiftly climbed the tree, pausing momentarily, captivated by how lovely she looked, a softness breaking through his intense demeanor. Just then, a billowing cloth wrapped around him, yanking him down from the tree, and Aizawa seized the opportunity to command Vlad King to send him to him. Vlad King unleashed a torrent of hardened BLD that enveloped the teen, encasing him thoroughly. As he thrashed against his restraints, Aizawa expressed relief at finally catching him. Izumi stepped cautiously toward the subdued teen, feeling an inexplicable connection spark within her. Gently, she reached out to remove his mask, but he instinctively tried to bite her, a wild glimmer in his eyes. Once the mask was removed, both she and Aizawa exchanged surprised glances as they processed the revelation. Izumi urged Aizawa to call their mother, her voice filled with urgency. Aizawa quickly fished his phone out of his pocket, concern and determination etched on his face. As the call connected, a familiar voice echoed through the speaker. Inko's tone was laid back, but curiosity lingered beneath. Aizawa took a deep breath, steadying his emotions, and informed her that they had found him. There was a brief pause before Inko reacted, confusion creeping into her voice as she asked how they had found him. Aizawa continued, revealing that they had found Izuku. 2 hours had passed since the chaotic fight that had disrupted their surroundings. Izuku found himself immobilized and chained to a sturdy bed crafted by Momo, who had ensured he stayed unconscious. The nearby wolves were securely kept in reinforced cages, their restless energy palpable. Aizawa stood with his brow furrowed, staring down at the still figure of Izuku, expressing disbelief and concern. Beside him, Izumi stood, visibly shaken yet hopeful as she kept her eyes locked on her brother. Izumi reassured Aizawa that their mother would arrive as quickly as possible, and so would Izuku. Aizawa broke the moment, turning toward the door and leading Izumi outside, where the cool air met them as a stark contrast to the tense atmosphere inside. Waiting for them were the remaining students, their earlier bravado diminished by exhaustion and wounds from the recent skirmish. Vlad, still patched up and looking somewhat worse for wear, eyed Aizawa with a blend of curiosity and concern, asking if he would explain his relation to the boy. With a heavy sigh, Aizawa revealed that the boy's name was Izuku, and he was his nephew, making him Izumi's brother. The revelation caused a wave of shock to ripple through the group, their expressions morphing from surprise to disbelief. Mina questioned Izumi, recalling that she had said her brother had died. Izumi, her voice thick with emotion, admitted that she had thought so, but now everything had changed. Setsuna expressed disbelief at the news of Izuku's survival, eager to shift the focus of the conversation. Aizawa's expression turned serious, a determined glint in his eye as he informed the group that Nizu and several other heroes would arrive in 2 hours to discuss Izuku's situation. He also mentioned that, due to the recent confrontation, they would be intensifying their training regimen, a revelation that sent a chill through the students. Shiro, unable to contain his shock, reacted with disbelief, hoping it was merely a joke. Aizawa clarified that Izuku had outmatched them in hand-to-hand combat and demonstrated exceptional skill with his swords. Even Aizawa's quirk had no effect on him, suggesting that Izuku was either quirkless or simply did not need to use it. Jiro's concern for the wolves prompted her to ask about their fate, to which Aizawa cryptically replied that the upcoming meeting would address that. Just then, a mournful howl echoed across the grounds, causing Shiro to comment on the wolves' discomfort in captivity. Meanwhile, deep within the forest, 4 wolves hidden in a damp cave perked up at the sound, feeling an instinctive pull to the source of the cry. Kendo, worried about the wolves' confinement, questioned Aizawa, who reassured him that the cages were secure, thanks to Yaoyorozu's ingenuity. Vlad King added that the cages were reinforced and equipped with quirk-canceling technology, a revelation that shocked the group. Mineta's wide-eyed reaction revealed his surprise at the notion that the wolves possessed quirks. Aizawa confirmed this, explaining that during their encounter, they discovered the black wolf could manipulate shadows, while the white wolf emitted an aura that rejuvenated its strength. In a poignant memory, a young Izuku, filled with excitement, expressed a longing to form a hero team with his sister, Izumi, while hiking through a lush forest with their father, All Might. Their joyful adventure took a dark turn when a villain ambushed them, leaving Izuku and Izumi precariously hanging from a cliff. In a desperate moment, All Might rushed to save them, but the villain's attack caused the children to lose their grip. All Might faced an impossible choice, saving only Izumi as a heavy log struck Izuku, plunging him into darkness. As Izuku regained consciousness, he was overwhelmed by confusion and panic upon realizing he was restrained. Struggling against his bindings, he activated his quirk, feeling a surge of power that allowed him to break free. Aizawa and Manalady rushed in just as Izuku unleashed his energy, charging toward the outside world. Aizawa commanded Vlad to block Izuku's path, but the chaos escalated as Izuku seized his swords and mask, narrowly dodging Vlad's attempts to restrain him. Vlad King remarked on the close call as Aizawa and the others arrived. Aizawa explained that Izuku must have accessed his quirk upon waking, and they needed to secure him in a more fortified location. However, their plans were interrupted by a haunting chorus of howls from the forest, prompting them to prepare for battle. Initially, nothing emerged from the shadows, leading them to suspect the howls were merely echoes. Suddenly, ice spikes rained down from the trees, forcing everyone to duck as 4 wolves charged into view. Aizawa warned the group that these wolves were not ordinary and possessed quirks. The darkest wolf unleashed its ability, freeing Izuku from his restraints. Seizing the moment, he grabbed his swords and released the other captured wolves. Now free and fueled by a mix of anger and adrenaline, Izuku faced the heroes, raising his swords in a menacing display. As the twin wolves distracted the heroes, Izuku charged forward, seeking to confront those he felt had betrayed him. Just as he was about to act, something heavy landed between them, creating a cloud of dust that obscured everyone's vision. As the dust settled, All Might's familiar voice resonated through the tension, announcing his arrival. Izuku felt a rush of emotions as memories surged forth, igniting a deep-seated rage within him. Gripping his swords tightly, he felt a familiar intensity rise, fueled by long-buried anger. With fervor, Izuku charged toward All Might, his determination palpable as he prepared to unleash his attack, declaring his technique with conviction. All Might narrowly evaded the strike, feeling the rush of air as the blade passed dangerously close, slicing through the fabric of his outfit. Izuku commanded his pack of shadowy wolves to surge forward, their eyes glinting with an otherworldly ferocity. They descended upon the other students and teachers, chaos erupting in their wake. 𝗧𝗏 shouted with urgency as he and 𝗵𝗏 barely managed to dodge the lunging attack from a massive white wolf. Around them, fellow students struggled against the onslaught as 𝗵𝗃𝗲, 𝗵𝗵𝗲𝗃, and Aizawa confronted a wolf that could manipulate BLD alongside another that vanished into shadows, both menacing presences. Amidst the turmoil, the 𝗕𝗏𝗿𝗺𝗵𝗆 was entangled in a fierce battle with the white wolf that launched sharp projectiles at them, while other students faced off against twin wolves that effortlessly split into four. No matter how they strategized to corner one of the four, it would simply rejoin its partners and multiply once more. Meanwhile, somewhere distant, a woman with vibrant green hair, known as 𝗂𝐭𝐴, clutched a weathered photo of young Izuku dressed in an All Might onesie. She trembled with hope, expressing her longing to see her son again. Beside her, a peculiar creature resembling a hybrid of a rat, bear, and dog sipped thoughtfully from a teacup, reassuring her that they were almost there. Back on the battlefield, the clash raged on as 𝗵𝗃𝗲 utilized his quirk to ensnare the two ravenous wolves. However, with a sharp flick of its snout, the BLD wolf nullified his efforts. Frustration mounted as he narrowly escaped an incoming attack. In a moment of desperation, 𝗵𝗵𝗃𝗁 pulled forth a massive chunk of concrete, attempting to trap the feral creatures. With a resounding crash, he encased them, but the wolves exerted their strength, shattering the cement cage and emerging unscathed. 𝗵𝗃𝗲 exclaimed in frustration as the shadow wolf lunged and bit into his calf. Aizawa sprang into action, delivering a swift kick to the shadow wolf's head, causing it to release 𝗵𝗃𝗲 and retreat into the darkness. He checked on 𝗵𝗃𝗲, who grimaced as he used his quirk to harden the BLD from his injury. Aizawa scanned the battlefield, his heart sinking as he noticed most of the students were either injured or struggling to stand. He muttered to himself, wondering when backup would arrive. As the battle continued, Izuku steeled himself, proclaiming a powerful technique that released a devastating arc of energy aimed directly at All Might. The hero barely dodged the strike, enough force behind it to send nearby trees crashing to the ground. All Might thought about the danger of Izuku's attacks, feeling the urgency of the situation. He implored Izuku, revealing his identity as his father, but his words fell on deaf ears. In an unsettling transformation, Izuku's body began to change. His skin split and peeled away, revealing fur beneath, while his legs lengthened and took on a wolf-like form. His face elongated, sharp teeth emerging as he completed the metamorphosis. With a haunting howl, he signaled his transformation, and the power that surged through him was palpable and terrifying. Izuku's gaze sharpened as he locked eyes with All Might, urgency flashing across his face. All Might felt a hint of dread creeping into his voice as Izuku called out another powerful technique, charging forward with blinding speed. He swung his sword down in a precise arc, the sheer force of the strike creating a concussive wave that caused a small crater to form beneath All Might's feet. The impact sent All Might flying through the dense woods, the sound of his body crashing through branches audible as Izuku dashed after him, relentless in his pursuit. Meanwhile, amid the chaos, the other students were embroiled in a fierce battle against a pack of ferocious wolves. Aizawa, ever the strategist, managed to usher the injured students to safety, forming a protective barrier around them as the wolves circled closer. Just then, a thick purple mist began to seep into the clearing, swirling ominously in the air. Aizawa called for Momo to create gas masks quickly. Momo nodded resolutely, tapping into her quirk to gather the necessary materials. As the mist enveloped the area, the wolves began to tire, their movements growing sluggish. Soon, one by one, they succumbed to sleep and collapsed onto the ground. Aizawa expressed his relief as the rest of the faculty, gathered alongside 𝗏𝗏, regrouped with the students. 𝗏𝗏 approached Aizawa, her expression etched with worry, asking about Izuku. Just as he opened his mouth to reassure her, a deafening crash echoed through the air as a figure came barreling through the trees, landing heavily near them, sending up a cloud of dust that obscured their vision. Once the dust settled, the scene before them was shocking. All Might lay on the ground, battered and bruised, breathing heavily, each exhale punctuated by pain. The atmosphere shifted as heavy footsteps approached, drawing their attention away from All Might. Emerging from the shadows of the trees was a towering werewolf, its eyes glinting with primal ferocity, a katakana sword in each hand. The sight left everyone speechless, jaws agape in disbelief as the creature inspected them with a predatory gaze. It glanced back at its pack, now sprawled helplessly on the ground, and let out a thunderous roar, a sound filled with fury and defiance that reverberated through the air. Izuku charged at them with incredible speed, propelled by fierce determination. In an instant, he was in front of Aizawa, who barely had time to react before Izuku swiped at him with his left hand, sending Aizawa crashing into a nearby tree. The impact was powerful enough to render him unconscious, a startling sight for the others around him. As Midnight, desperate to maintain control of the situation, ripped another section from her already tattered outfit, a dense pink mist began to swirl and envelop the area, creeping ominously toward Izuku. Izuku moved his sword downward, calling upon his technique. The force of his attack pushed the pink mist away from him, but unfortunately for the heroes, the remnants of the mist began to roll back toward them. Quick on her feet, Momo created gas masks for several nearby heroes. Those who managed to fit the masks on were spared from the effects of the mist, but soon, one by one, all the students and several heroes who were caught unprepared collapsed to the ground, unconscious. Only a handful remained cognizant: 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗏, 𝗵𝗵𝗲, 𝗵𝗔, 𝗏𝗏, Power Loader, 𝗵𝐿𝑑 and the boisterous Mike. As Izuku's focus shifted, he sprinted toward them, his two swords gleaming menacingly in the murky air. 𝗵𝗵𝗲 stepped forward protectively, urging 𝗏𝗏 and 𝗵𝗔 to get back. Mike, never one to back down, positioned himself between Izuku and his comrades, channeling his quirk to amplify his voice. The sound wave struck Izuku like a physical force, forcing him to the ground in shock as he instinctively covered his ears. But Izuku was not deterred. Gritting his teeth, he let out a howl of his own, the sound resonating with raw power that countered Mick's sonic scream and sent him staggering backwards several feet. Izuku struggled to regain his footing, disoriented from the overwhelming noise reverberating in his ears. Seizing the moment, the instructors moved swiftly. 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗏 unleashed her quirk, summoning a massive earth golem that pinned Izuku down. At the same time, 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗆 utilized his own quirk to further restrain him, while 𝗵𝗵𝗲 encased him in a solid sphere of hardened cement, ensuring he couldn't escape. With urgency, Vlad King directed the others to gather the students and teachers and wake up Aizawa, Midnight, or Momo. They needed to put Izuku to sleep before he could use his quirk again. However, inside the confines of the sphere, Izuku's form began to shift and contort, his body morphing more into that of a wolf. With determination blazing in his eyes, he grasped one of his swords with his mouth. Izuku proclaimed his technique as electricity coursed through him, surging outwards and shattering the cement sphere along with his restraints. As he broke free, Izuku returned to a humanoid wolf form and seized his other sword. Fear crept into 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗆's voice as he muttered that even that didn't work. Just as Izuku lunged toward them again, poised to unleash another devastating technique, a commanding female voice rang out, unleashing a violent gust of wind that slammed into Izuku, forcing him to crash to the ground. 3 teenage girls materialized before the heroes. The first was notably short, with long black hair tied in a ponytail, dressed in a pinkish-red kimono with ragged sleeves and leggings over a white undershirt. A red ragged cape draped over her shoulders, complemented by a red hair ribbon and fingerless gloves. She carried both a sword and a bow, exuding confidence. The second girl was taller, sporting fair skin and long black hair enhanced by striking red streaks tied back in a high ponytail with a white ribbon. Her piercing purple eyes surveyed the scene as she wore a navy kimono-like skin-tight jumpsuit lined with deep violet armored plating. A short sword hung at her waist alongside a naginata. The last girl, with her short silver hair streaked with paradise pink, had captivating magenta eyes. She wore a light purplish graphite button dress shirt with a paradise pink ribbon underneath a white blazer, accentuated with violet detailing. Her white breaths were secured by a brown belt with a golden buckle, and she finished off her look with sturdy brown boots, a katana sheathed at her side, hinting at her readiness for battle. The heroes eyed the trio warily. Vlad King asserted his authority, asking who they were and stating that this was private property. The white-haired girl explained that her name was 𝗬𝗲, and these were her companions, Setsuna and Moroha. She assured them that they would take care of the demon. Moroha warned 𝗬𝗲 to brace herself as they turned their attention back to Izuku, who was rising in visible fury. Fueled by anger, Izuku charged once more. In response, Moroha unsheathed her katana while 𝗬𝗲 and Setsuna prepared their weapons. As they launched their attacks, they shouted in unison, unleashing a barrage of bright arrows, vibrant swallows, and 2 ethereal blue fire dragons toward him. Izuku roared, meeting their assault head-on with his own technique. The resulting collision ignited a massive explosion, sending dirt and debris flying and shrouding the area in a cloud of dust. Cautiously, Moroha peered through the haze, asking if they had gotten him. Suddenly, amidst the swirling dust, they heard the unmistakable sound of a wolf's howl. Izuku emerged from the dust, his blades drawn and poised to strike. But before he could land a blow on Moroha, 𝗬𝗲's sword and Setsuna's naginata clashed against his blades, stopping his attack in its tracks. With a combined effort, they pushed him back several feet. 𝗬𝗲 strategized that range attacks wouldn't work, but if they got up close and personal, he wouldn't be able to use those. Her allies nodded in agreement, ready to face the challenge ahead. The tension hung thick in the air as Izuku and the 3 girls locked eyes, each waiting for the perfect moment to launch their attack while the wind whipped around them, rustling the leaves. Suddenly, Izuku took a deep breath, filling his lungs with air just as 𝗬𝗲, Setsuna, and Moroha charged at him. This was the moment he had been waiting for. As he exhaled forcefully, a gust of breath erupted toward them, a smell so overwhelming that all 3 girls instinctively recoiled, startled by the unexpected assault. Seizing the moment of disruption, Izuku focused his attention on 𝗬𝗲 and swung both of his swords down with tremendous force. The impact reverberated through the ground as 𝗬𝗲 barely managed to block the attack with her own sword, her feet digging into the earth as cracks spiderwebbed out beneath her from the sheer power of Izuku's assault. Not far behind, Setsuna lunged, her naginata gleaming in the light as she aimed to strike. Izuku, sensing her presence, pushed harder against 𝗬𝗲's sword, forcing her back just in time to avoid the arc of Setsuna's weapon. He landed gracefully on the ground and pivoted, charging straight at Setsuna. In a swift move, 𝗬𝗲 and Moroha flanked his sides, preparing to strike from both angles. With a sharp inhale, Izuku called out, "Wolf breathing, 3rd form, pounce." His body propelled forward at breakneck speed, launching him into the air directly in front of Setsuna. Caught off guard, she had no time to react. Izuku's twin swords pierced through her defenses, moving deep into her stomach. She gasped, and the force behind Izuku's strike sent her hurtling away, sliding off his blades. Moroha shouted, her voice laced with fury as she charged at Izuku, her sword clashing against his in a flurry of strikes. The sound of metal clashing echoed against the backdrop of the fierce wind, sparks flying as their blades collided. Meanwhile, 𝗬𝗲 rushed to where Setsuna lay, concern etched on her face. She urged Setsuna to respond, her voice filled with desperation. Setsuna managed to reply, a faint grimace crossing her features, assuring 𝗬𝗲 that she would be all right. With determination, they both stood and sprinted over to aid Moroha, who was struggling to hold her ground against Izuku. Izuku, sensing the shift in momentum, jumped back to create distance. He inhaled deeply once more, channeling his energy. Wolf breathing, 8th form, snare. He shouted, transforming into a blur as he sprinted on all fours around them with unparalleled speed. The wind howled as he circled, the radius closing in as he prepared to strike again. With their heightened senses, the girls managed to evade most of the attacks, barely dodging the onslaught. Just as Izuku began to articulate another form, the ground trembled violently beneath them. A roar echoed as an earth golem erupted from the earth behind him, delivering a staggering punch to Izuku's back that sent him flying forward. Towa, Setsuna, and Moroha stood frozen in shock before they turned to see Pixie Bob, looking fierce and determined, having intervened just in time. Izuku quickly regained his footing, ready to charge again, only to find an injured hero named 𝗬𝗵𝗲 sneaking up behind him. With surprising strength, 𝗬𝗵𝗲 seized Izuku's arms, pinning them behind his back. He urged the girls to hit him with everything they had. Seizing the opportunity, the girls unleashed their most powerful attacks in unison. A torrent of energy surged toward Izuku, who struggled against 𝗬𝗵𝗲's hold. With a gritted jaw, Izuku inhaled again, channeling every ounce of strength left in him. He flexed his muscles, causing 𝗬𝗵𝗲 to wince and release his grip as the pain escalated. Bracing himself, Izuku grabbed 𝗬𝗵𝗲's leg and hurled him away just as the girls' combined attacks barreled into him. A deafening roar escaped him as the blasts connected, resulting in a cataclysmic explosion and a massive cloud of dust that rose into the air. As the dust began to settle, the girls stood on edge, eyes wide in disbelief. There, emerging from the haze, was Izuku. Though battered and breathing heavily, his wounds started to mend before their very eyes. Towa exclaimed in shock, her heart racing. Izuku locked eyes with the girls, a steely resolve settling over him as he readied his swords for another round. The three girls mirrored his energy, their resolve unwavering, preparing for yet another confrontation. Just as battle seemed inevitable, 𝗏𝗏 stepped in front of them, an air of authority enveloping her. She declared fiercely that enough was enough and that they would not hurt her son any longer. Shocked gasps escaped Towa, Setsuna, and Moroha at 𝗏𝗏's unexpected proclamation. Moroha expressed her concern, insisting that it wasn't safe. 𝗏𝗏, not yielding, activated her quirk, a palpable energy radiating from her as it pinned the girls to the ground, immobilizing them against their will. She insisted again that it was enough, her eyes blazing with protective fury. 𝗏𝗏 gazed at the group before her, the fear palpable in their eyes. It was clear to her that they would not dare defy her. With a sigh of relief, she released them and turned her attention to Izuku, who stood rigid with surprise at her unexpected action. His instincts took over as he prepared for a confrontation, drawing his swords as 𝗏𝗏 began to approach him with deliberate steps. She spoke softly, hoping to reach the boy she loved so dearly. Despite her affirming words, Izuku remained tense, ready to move, his grip on the swords unwavering. 𝗏𝗏 continued, her heart aching as she recalled the time lost between them. She expressed her wish that she had been there to catch him when he fell from that cliff, tears brimming in her eyes and tracing paths down her cheeks. Izuku lowered himself into a defensive stance, inhaling deeply to steady himself, but 𝗏𝗏 pressed on, taking careful, gentle steps closer. Just a foot away now, she could see indecision flicker across his face, and it was in that moment, his senses heightened, that he caught her scent. It was strange yet comforting, an aroma that stirred something deep within him. The scent felt unusual, yet it brought warmth and a sense of calm. Suddenly, 𝗏𝗏 began to sing a lullaby, her voice soft and melodic, weaving through the air like a gentle embrace. As the soothing notes surrounded him, Izuku felt the tension begin to dissipate. To everyone's astonishment, he started to relax, the weapons at his side and the menacing aura that had enveloped him began to fade. As the lullaby continued, Izuku's grip on his sword faltered until it clattered to the ground. Tears streamed down his face as he found himself lost in a whirlwind of memories from a distant past, a flicker of warmth he had thought long gone. 𝗏𝗏 seized the moment, wrapping her arms around him in a tight, loving hug. The lullaby lingered in the air as she held him, and at that instant, Izuku felt only one overwhelming emotion. Warmth and love enveloped him like a comforting blanket, a feeling he couldn't fully comprehend but desperately needed. As the memories washed over him with poignant clarity, he slowly returned her embrace, crying harder now, his body trembling with emotion. Izuku's vision blurred, and just before the world faded into darkness, only one word escaped his lips in a whisper filled with longing, "Mama." With that, he fainted, collapsing into her arms, finally finding solace in her presence. After the intense battle with Izuku, the occupants of the training camp slowly began to regain consciousness, each overwhelmed by a mixture of exhaustion and confusion. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the room and casting shadows on the worried faces of the staff. Nizu, the always composed principal, took it upon himself to explain the chaotic events that had transpired. To their astonishment, the team quickly realized the gravity of the situation. In light of Izuku's volatile state, he was moved to a secure room designed for added safety and monitoring. However, it soon became clear that he had developed an unwavering grip on 𝗵𝗄, his mother, refusing to let go even as others attempted to assist. After deliberation, the decision was made that 𝗵𝗄 should remain by his side for comfort, and staff would take turns bringing her meals to ensure she remained nourished. Meanwhile, the wolves who had fought alongside Izuku were confined to cages equipped with quirk-canceling technology and fitted with special cuffs to mitigate any potential danger. Safety was the main concern, and these measures were deemed necessary to prevent any unwanted incidents. As they regrouped, Aizawa, the ever-efficient homeroom teacher, posed a critical question about their next steps in this situation. Nizu, with his insightful demeanor, suggested waiting until Izuku awakened. Thankfully, 𝗵𝗄 was present and could help pacify him in the meantime. They decided to shift their focus to the others who were there as well. They made their way to a separate room where Setsuna, Towa, and Moroha were being held. As Nizu and Aizawa entered, Nizu introduced himself with a calm, authoritative presence. They settled into their seats, the atmosphere tense with uncertainty. Nizu began with a straightforward inquiry about their identities. Towa chuckled softly, shaking her head, indicating they might not be believed. Nizu, undeterred, encouraged them to share their story. Moroha was the first to speak up, her tone serious as she declared they were demon hunters. Aizawa's skepticism was immediate, expressing disbelief. However, Nizu interjected, suggesting there might be some truth to their claim. He gestured at Setsuna, noting that the wound she had sustained from Izuku was completely healed, and her fighting style was unlike anything they had seen before. Nizu's arguments cast doubt on Aizawa's skepticism, leaving him momentarily speechless. He then pressed further, asking why they had attacked Izuku, emphasizing that he was human, not a demon. Towa explained that she and her sister were half demons, and Moroha was a quarter demon. They could sense other demons around them and had detected a demon aura surrounding Izuku, leading them to believe he posed a danger. Nizu absorbed this information, mulling it over. He acknowledged the clarity it brought but shifted the conversation to another matter. Setsuna looked anxious, asking what that would be. Nizu explained that although they had helped, they had trespassed on private property reserved for UA students. The atmosphere grew heavy as the three young women exchanged apprehensive glances, realizing they were in serious trouble. Nizu then presented them with two options. They could either be taken to jail for their trespassing, or they could join UA. Given their unique abilities, he believed they would be a valuable addition to the student body. The three friends deliberated, exchanging meaningful looks before nodding in unison. They agreed to join UA, and Nizu's face lit up with a welcoming smile. He informed Aizawa that they would be his responsibility moving forward, and Aizawa sighed, already preparing himself for the added challenge. As they exited the room, Nizu took the time to inform the trio of their new classmates and ensure they received proper uniforms for their return to school. Once gathered, Aizawa addressed the students present, announcing that the three would be attending UA and expecting everyone to treat them with respect, particularly warning Mineta, who appeared intimidated under Aizawa's intense gaze. As the day progressed, lunchtime arrived, and students filled the cafeteria, the atmosphere lively yet filled with curiosity regarding the newcomers. Izumi decided to fetch a plate of food to bring to her mother, who was still keeping an eye on Izuku in the secure room. She entered with a smile, announcing her arrival and spotting 𝗏𝗏 seated next to Izuku, who was still in a deep slumber. 𝗏𝗏 expressed her gratitude for the food as Izumi set the plate on the table beside them. She inquired if there had been any changes, to which 𝗏𝗏 replied softly that she hoped he would wake up soon. Just then, the enticing aroma of the food wafted through the air and reached Izuku's nose, stirring him from his sleep. With a sudden start, his eyes flew open, and he sat up with childlike fervor. He felt a wave of hunger wash over him, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on the food, then quickly shifted to the faces of his mother and sister, who were smiling at him with tears of relief and joy. 𝗏𝗏 expressed her happiness at his awakening, enveloping him in a heartfelt hug. The warmth of the embrace brought back memories of his childhood, flooding his mind with emotions. After a moment, 𝗏𝗏 gently pulled back, presenting him with the food. With little regard for manners, Izuku dove in, eating as if he hadn't had a meal in days. 𝗏𝗏 chuckled softly, noticing his behavior, and playfully swatted him on the back of the head with a magazine she had been reading. She playfully chastised him about his eating habits, unable to hide her smile. Just then, Aizawa, Midnight, and Nizu entered the room, witnessing the scene unfold before them. Nizu chuckled, addressing the situation lightly, noting that Izuku had been living alone in the wild for quite some time, which explained his different eating habits. Once finished, Izuku turned to Nizu, a curious look in his eyes, asking about the pack. Nizu reassured him that they were safe and had been placed where they wouldn't cause any trouble. He then elaborated on the importance of Izuku enrolling in UA for a proper education, suggesting that they could observe him at the training camp to determine the best way to proceed. After a brief pause, 𝗏𝗏 sighed and agreed, kneeling before Izuku to ask for his thoughts. Izuku looked puzzled but expressed his trust in his mother, stating he wanted the pack with him. Nizu smiled warmly at his response and confirmed that training would begin the next day. With that, they left the secure room, the air buzzing with anticipation for what the future would hold for Izuku and his newfound companions. The morning sunlight poured into the classroom, gently illuminating the faces of the students who were blinking sleepily, still trying to shake off the remnants of sleep. Nizu, perched confidently atop Present Mix's shoulders, addressed the assembly with an energetic tone, hoping they had all rested well for the demanding day ahead. He continued, excitement glimmering in his eyes, announcing that 4 new students would be joining them at UA. As he gestured toward the entrance, the 3 newcomers, Moroha, Setsuna, and Towa, stood ready. Just then, an odd sound broke the tension, resembling running water. The group turned in unison, only to be greeted by the surprising sight of Izuku Midoriya, squatting against the side of the building, seemingly oblivious to the stares of his classmates. When Izuku finished and adjusted his breathes, he turned back to see his classmates gaping at him in disbelief. Izumi expressed her shock and delivered a swift smack to the back of Izuku's head. He protested, instinctively raising his hands to protect himself, while Izumi retorted about his behavior. Izuku shrugged casually, claiming he was just marking his territory. Nizu, always the calm mediator, reminded everyone that Izuku had been living alone in the wild, so it was natural for him to act this way. Returning to their previous position, Nizu addressed the group again, welcoming Izuku Midoriya as their new classmate. The tension in the room was palpable as his name was revealed, with students exchanging anxious glances. Izumi quickly reassured her classmates that Izuku wouldn't do anything too wild as long as she and their mother were there to keep an eye on him. However, Izuku seemed unfazed by the scrutiny, curiously asking about his pack. Nizu chuckled softly, gesturing toward a set of cages in the distance, assuring him that they were right over there. With a click of a remote control, Nizu opened the cages, and in an instant, a pack of wolves burst forth, racing toward Izuku and surrounding him in a protective circle. The students gasped, eyes widened in both awe and fear as the wolves bared their teeth, their instincts warning them of the strangers nearby. Izuku commanded the pack to stand down, his voice steady and authoritative. The wolves took a moment, still showing their formidable teeth as they evaluated the situation. Taking a deep breath, Izuku threw his head back and howled, a sound filled with wild energy and connection to his companions. The classroom echoed with the haunting melody, resonating a blend of loyalty, power, and the call of the wild, as the day at UA began to unravel with unexpected fervor. The tension in the air began to dissipate as the wolves, sensing a change, lowered their heads and tucked their tails. Izuku declared that the pack was calm and inquired about the swords. Nizu responded that they had discussed Izuku's training with his mother and agreed it would be too dangerous for him to wield real swords at this time. Instead, he gestured toward Aizawa, who stepped forward with a pair of wooden swords in hand, their polished surface glimmering in the sunlight. Frustration boiled over for Izuku as he expressed his longing for real swords, his voice echoing off the nearby trees. Izumi, his sister, stepped in with a calming demeanor, placing a hand on his shoulder. She encouraged him to remain calm, reminding him that it was just a precaution to ensure no one got hurt, and that it was what their mother wanted. Izuku huffed in annoyance but begrudgingly accepted the wooden swords, strapping them to his sides with a defiant glare. Nizu announced that the group needed to pay attention, explaining that their training regimen would be significantly more intense than originally planned due to unforeseen circumstances. The students focused on Izuku, who had inexplicably begun kneeling beside the wolves, his hands scratching their bellies, a wide grin spreading across his face. Aizawa pointed out that they had all been bested by Izuku, who hadn't even needed to use his quirk, and the students nodded in reluctant agreement, acknowledging the truth of his words. Feeling restless, Izuku stood up abruptly, seizing the wooden sword with renewed vigor. He made his way to a large boulder nearby, taking a deep breath to steady himself. With determination, he charged at the boulder, spinning gracefully in midair before landing on the other side. The sound of wood cracking beneath his grip echoed as he faced Nizu again, his eyes burning with intensity, insisting that he wanted a real sword, not just sticks. A mocking laugh broke the silence, with Monoma sneering from the back, claiming that the only reason Izuku had beaten them was because of the swords. Just then, a loud cracking noise resonated from the boulder, capturing everyone's attention. Several cracks spider-webbed across its surface before it crumbled into a shower of pebbles, leaving the students in stunned silence. They realized that Izuku had achieved this feat with nothing but his wooden swords. Izuku retorted that Monoma was next if he continued to speak, standing firm as the wolves growled protectively at him. Aizawa raised a hand, signaling for silence, and informed Izuku that it was enough. He then addressed Monoma, stating that he had just earned his class more work, while the 1B students glared at their classmate, ready to defend their honor. Present Mike remarked that they needed to find something stronger for Izuku to use, to which Nizu agreed, noting that Power Loader was at UA. In that moment, Izuku caught a different scent in the air, something unfamiliar yet intriguing. Without a second thought, he followed it, leaving his sister's voice behind as she called after him. He soon found the source of the scent emanating from the bus that had brought the heroes, announcing that he smelled someone new. The nearby heroes instantly positioned themselves protectively in front of the students, ready for any threat as the bus doors creaked open. Aizawa commanded whoever was inside to step out, his voice low and steady as the tension grew. The bus door swung open to reveal a girl with striking pink dreadlocks, who exclaimed that she thought she could sneak in unnoticed. Midnight chided 𝗵𝗃 for being there, reminding her that she should be at UA. Mei explained that she saw everyone rushing off and thought it would be fun to see what was going on and if they needed her support items. Nizu took charge of the situation, stating that it would take time for her to return to UA, and assigned her to assist in creating support items for everyone, reminding her that she would face the consequences of sneaking out later. As the commotion settled, Izuku approached Aizawa, reclaiming his mask and fastening it over his face. Just then, Moroha stepped forward, her curiosity piqued as she moved toward Izuku, with the wolves keeping a vigilant watch around him. She asked where he got the mask, and Izuku explained that he received it after a long battle. As Izuku walked away with Izumi shadowing him closely, the wolves allowed Moroha to approach without issue, a sign of their trust in her. Ida considered thoughtfully that they might only let her and their mother get close because they shared the same scent as Izuku, or perhaps he had told them it was okay. Aizawa instructed everyone to get started, dividing the students based on their strengths. As the training began, Izuku made his way over to Jirota Shishida, a student from 1B. They exchanged gazes, and 𝗔𝗫𝗧 activated his quirk, transforming into his werewolf form. Feeling the weight of the moment, 𝗔𝗫𝗧 slowly transformed back to his normal state. With a deep sense of humility, he knelt and prostrated himself before Izuku, a gesture of deep respect and admiration. As Izuku turned back, a determined look in his eyes, he walked purposefully toward the training grounds, ready to hone his skills and prepare for the challenges ahead. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation as 𝗔𝗫𝗧 remained on the ground. Throughout the day, everyone diligently worked on their training to enhance their skills. Atop a rugged cliff, Izuku watched as Azui practiced her wall-climbing techniques, her agility allowing her to scale the rock face with impressive speed. Intrigued by the various abilities his classmates displayed, Izuku found himself lost in thought, contemplating their quirks. Suddenly, his sister Izumi called up to him, her voice tinged with urgency, reminding him that he was supposed to be training with them. Izuku looked down at her, a mix of annoyance and defiance flickering across his face. He insisted that he was the strongest there, channeling his stubbornness. Undeterred, Izumi responded firmly that their mother had said so, urging him to come down. With a reluctant grunt, Izuku started his descent down the cliff, leaping nimbly until he landed beside her. He expressed his enthusiasm for wanting swords, looking to her for help in realizing that dream. Izumi explained that he would have to wait until May finished making them, her tone sympathetic but resolute. Frustrated, Izuku groaned and decided it was time to train. He began to move, leading the way as the others eagerly followed, intrigued by his training methods. Izuku found an open area where he sourced a sturdy stick and dug it into the ground, marking a large circle for his training. Once established, he called out for his pack, and the wolves, his loyal companions, responded immediately, circling him in an energetic whirl. Without warning, the wolves lunged, splitting their numbers as they charged toward him. One wolf, fur bristling, lunged directly at Izuku, who ducked expertly and, using his strength, grabbed the wolf by its hind legs. With a swift movement, he hurled the creature toward the others, causing a loud thud as it collided with its pack. The impact knocked the 3 remaining wolves back momentarily, giving Izuku the chance to assess the situation. He quickly noticed ice spikes forming around him as the ice and light wolf unleashed a barrage of icy shards. Just then, the dark wolf emerged from Izuku's shadow, taking advantage of the chaos and biting down on his left leg. Realizing the extent of his injury, Izuku understood the situation had escalated. His BLD began to move of its own accord, binding his right leg like a restraint, an unmistakable attack from the BLD wolf. With determination, he transformed into his werewolf form, feeling the surge of power wash over him. Once fully transformed, he slammed his fists into the ground with tremendous force, causing cracks to spread outward as dust clouds billowed up around him. Fueled by adrenaline, Izuku seized the dark wolf, prying its jaw open just as powerful healing energy began to close the wound on his leg, freeing him from the BLD restraints. With a fierce growl, Izuku lunged at the remaining wolves, refusing to give them a moment to recover. Transitioning back into his wolf form, he hurled himself at them, knocking them out of the designated circle. Now only the BLD and shadow wolves remained. Izuku reverted to his human form, a choice that surprised the onlookers. Some students expressed their confusion about his decision, wondering why he turned back when he could have easily dispatched the 2 wolves. Izumi explained that the shadow wolf could hide within Izuku's shadow and launch surprise attacks, while the BLD wolf could manipulate his BLD to bind him. By turning back, Izuku limited the shadow's reach. As Izuku locked eyes with the remaining wolves, tension hung thick in the air. A standoff commenced, each side waiting for the first move. Without warning, the BLD wolf shot a projectile of crimson energy toward him. Izuku dodged fluidly, but the BLD wolf charged at him next, pushing him dangerously close to the edge of the training circle. However, Izuku stood his ground, forcing the wolf back just as the shadow wolf leaped from the BLD wolf's shadow, catching everyone off guard. Izuku remained composed, proclaiming that the pack was strong, but not stronger than their alpha. He dug his feet into the earth and pushed back against both wolves with new resolve. He wrapped his arms around them and threw them out of the circle in a display of strength. With a triumphant howl, Izuku celebrated his victory as the onlookers observed in disbelief. As he caught his breath, they saw the light wolf healing the others, including Izuku, who had lost quite a bit of BLD during the confrontation. One of the teachers noted that Izuku trained through actual combat, and thanks to the light wolf, they didn't have to worry too much about sustaining serious injuries. Later that evening, it was time for dinner, and a collective rumble of anticipation filled the air as everyone awaited the food. One student called out impatiently, asking where the food was. The teacher announced that starting today, they would all be responsible for making their meals, revealing an array of food materials laid out before them. Understanding the challenge, one student instantly took charge, declaring that this was a test of their survival skills and rallying everyone to make the best curry in the world. The students groaned collectively, overwhelmed by the added responsibility. Observing the chaos, another student shrugged nonchalantly, unimpressed by the fuss. A practical classmate chimed in, noting that their training had drained quite a bit of their stamina, explaining their tiredness. Meanwhile, Izumi was busy chopping vegetables for the curry when her mother approached her warmly. They exchanged greetings, and Izumi shared that the training had been exhausting. Her mother's expression shifted to one of worry as she asked where Izuku was. Izumi's smile faded as she scanned the area, realizing he was missing. Determined to find him, she began asking their classmates if they had seen him. One of the teachers, noticing the shift in atmosphere, ordered everyone to put out the call to find Izuku. Unease settled over everyone as they set off to locate their missing friend, each worried for his safety. Just then, a soft rustling emerged from the depths of the dark forest, catching the attention of the onlookers. Suddenly, a graceful flock of deer burst forth from the underbrush, their elegant forms momentarily silhouetted against the fading light. But hot on their heels, a pack of wolves emerged, their eyes gleaming with a predatory instinct. From the shadows of one deer, a shadowy wolf sprang forth, its powerful jaws clamping down on the creature's neck, sending it crashing to the forest floor. The other wolves, each exhibiting their unique powers, swiftly joined the fray. The ice wolf, with a swift flick of its paw, launched a jagged ice spike that struck another unsuspecting deer. Simultaneously, the light wolf radiated a blinding beam of brilliance that temporarily stunned yet another deer, making it an easy target for a wolf capable of expertly aimed projectiles. In the blink of an eye, each wolf had secured its meal, feasting on the fallen deer surrounding them in a haunting yet mesmerizing tableau. However, the sudden tranquility was shattered by a thunderous roar that reverberated through the trees. A massive bear lumbered out of the woods, its powerful form instilling fear in the hearts of the students. Quickly, the teachers formed a protective barrier around the students, ready to defend against the potential threat. Towa, Setsuna, and Moroha readied themselves for battle, their senses heightened for the impending clash. Just then, they witnessed a shocking sight. Izuku, transformed into his formidable werewolf form, lunged at the bear with ferocious speed, tackling it to the ground. The clash echoed through the air as the bear swiped at him with fierce, clawed paws, but Izuku was quicker. He deftly dodged the bear's attack and retaliated with a swift slash of his razor-sharp claws across the bear's chest, drawing a pained roar from the beast. With adrenaline surging, Izuku launched himself at the bear once more, sinking his powerful jaws into the creature's throat. With a decisive twist of his head, he ended the struggle in an instant. Releasing his grip, Izuku howled triumphantly, a sound that resonated in the stillness of the forest. The other wolves joined in the chorus, their howls echoing a victory that hung in the air like electricity. As Izuku stepped back from the fallen bear, he ventured into the forest once more. Moments later, he re-emerged, each hand clutching 2 extra Sika deer, his spoils impeccable and impressive. A stunned silence enveloped the group as they processed the sight before them. It was then that Izuku's mother, Inko, approached him, her expression a mix of concern and relief as she looked up at her towering son. She gently but firmly commanded him to sit. Obeying without hesitation, Izuku sat before her like a loyal pup. He announced proudly that he had brought food, his excitement evident. Inko's gaze softened, though her tone remained serious as she expressed her worry for him and his sister. She emphasized the importance of informing them next time. Izuku nodded earnestly, an obedient glint in his eyes, and the earlier ferocity melted away as he submitted to her guidance. The contrast was striking. Everyone around them was left speechless, witnessing the once ferocious warrior bring himself down to such humility, bowing to his mother despite having just vanquished a powerful bear. Soon, Inko finished her conversation with Izuku and got to work preparing the two deer and bear while the shadow wolf went to retrieve his tools. He approached Momo and asked for thick string, which she readily provided. Grateful, Izuku went to the carcasses just as the shadow wolf returned with a knife and some jars containing various substances. Izuku hung the carcasses and cut their necks, allowing BLD to drip onto the ground. He then called the BLD wolf over to use its quirk to quickly drain the BLD from the carcasses. Izuku began to remove the pelts, taking the bear's head off with the pelt and setting it aside. He carefully cut into the stomachs of the carcasses, ensuring not to damage any of the organs while the rest of the students busied themselves making curry, some wanting to watch Izuku. He worked swiftly and carefully, laying the organs on a table they had brought out. At that moment, the light wolf approached and used its quirk on the carcasses, prompting confusion among the onlookers. When asked what it had done, Izuku explained that it made the meat safe to eat. Nizu remarked on the light wolf's ability to remove harmful bacteria from the meat, finding it interesting. Once Izuku finished butchering the animals, he set to work making a fire as the others completed the curry. Izumi brought out a bowl for Izuku, but he insisted he would eat something else and returned to the forest with Aizawa accompanying him, as he was no longer allowed to go alone. Izuku soon returned with a variety of plants and mushrooms. He began cooking the meat, opening the jars and coating it with the contents inside. Inko became curious about the jars and recognized the smell of MSG, recalling how Izuku would always watch her cook and ask about the spices she used. Once he finished coating the meat, he grabbed a large pan and approached Bakugo, offering to share some of the meat if they would chop it quickly. Surprisingly, the Bakugo twins agreed, and everyone was shocked by their cooperation. Soon, the aroma filled the air, making everyone drool as Izuku worked on the pelts while waiting for the meat to finish cooking. With Izumi and Inko helping to ensure the meat didn't burn, it was finally done. Izuku approached his mother, sister, Momo, and the Bakugos and Todorokis, who had gathered around a fire. They all expressed their gratitude for the food, and as they took their first bites, their eyes widened in astonishment. Everyone stared at them, and then they began to eat voraciously. Bakugo exclaimed how delicious the meat was, unable to stop himself, and the others followed suit, while Izuku ate his portion as usual. Some students wanted to try some, but Izuku transformed into his werewolf form, declaring that he had hunted the prey. The others backed away, startled. However, Izuku noticed a little boy wearing a hat with 2 spikes on it and returned to offer him some of the meat before going back to his meal. After everyone finished eating, they decided to enter the baths to relax. To their surprise, Izuku entered happily without hesitation, and the wolves followed suit. Meanwhile, Inko engaged in conversation with Aizawa and Nizu about Izuku's future at UA. This was why Mineta felt he was born with this quirk. It was his calling. As Ida and the others tried to stop him, Izuku thought it was some sort of race and quickly climbed to the top of the wall. He celebrated his victory, claiming he had beaten Mineta. However, as he kicked Mineta down from the wall, he noticed Koda, the boy from earlier, with him. Unfortunately, Koda fell onto the girl's side just as Izuku kicked Mineta off, but Izumi caught him just in time. She instructed Izuku to head back to his side while she took Koda back. Izuku, however, slipped and fell onto the girl's side, landing awkwardly. The girls stared at him, and in that moment his towel slipped. He quickly glanced at them, feeling a rush of embarrassment. Just then, a loud explosion echoed in the distance, snapping him back to reality. His eyes glowed green as he climbed back on top of the wall separating the boys and girls. He sensed danger and declared that they had intruders to hunt. With that, he leaped off the wall and dashed into the woods, where wolves followed him, snatching his clothes in the process. Izumi and the others quickly changed and chased after him, determined to catch up. As they ran toward the source of the explosion, Izuku spotted a shadowy wolf and commanded it to retrieve swords. The wolf obeyed and vanished into the shadows. Meanwhile, deeper in the woods, a person wearing a boar mask shouted in confusion about their location. Another, adorned with Hanafuda earrings, urged calm, while a frightened individual with bright hair pleaded not to be left alone. A girl with a bamboo stick in her mouth was also present. Suddenly, the man with the boar mask sensed something fast approaching and drew 2 katanas, ready for a fight. The person with Hanafuda earrings detected a different kind of demon approaching. Izuku, in his werewolf form, charged at them, asserting that they did not belong there. The boar-masked individual took a defensive stance as Izuku's claws clashed with his blades, sending debris flying. Tanjiro, the boy with the Hanafuda earrings, checked on his friends, Zenitsu and Inosuke, amidst the dust cloud. Once the dust settled, they saw Izuku standing before them, and then the shadow wolf emerged, carrying 2 swords in its mouth, laying them at Izuku's feet. Izuku's form shrank back to normal, though he still wore his mask. Tanjiro noted the scent of a demon but also recognized that Izuku was human and a dual wielder like Inosuke. Inosuke, brimming with confidence, proclaimed himself the king of the mountain, challenging Izuku. Izuku calmly stated that he was the only king, inhaling deeply. Inosuke, not backing down, accepted the challenge, and both warriors prepared to unleash their techniques. As their blades collided, sparks flew in every direction. Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Nezuko attempted to intervene, but the wolves blocked their path, ensuring they wouldn't interfere. Zenitsu, hiding behind Tanjiro, asked what they should do. Just then, Izumi appeared with the others, spotting the wolves surrounding them. She demanded the wolves back off, and they complied, recognizing her authority. Tanjiro caught a familiar scent and turned to see 2 figures approaching. One of them, with a smile, announced that they would be feasting sooner than expected. Back with Izuku and Inosuke, the 2 continued their intense battle, the sound of clashing metal echoing through the forest. Izuku unleashed a powerful attack, but Inosuke deftly dodged, watching the trees fall in the wake of Izuku's strength. Inosuke realized that Izuku's power was extraordinary, possibly rivaling that of the Hashira, which only fueled his excitement. Determined to close the distance, Inosuke charged at Izuku, using his beast-breathing technique. Izuku countered with his own, and their swords clashed again, creating a crater beneath them. They tested each other's strength, but Inosuke managed to headbutt Izuku, causing him to stumble back. Izuku, exhilarated by the challenge, declared that he wanted to SW's things up and stabbed his sword into the ground. Inosuke agreed, placing his sword beside Izuku's, ready for the next round of their fierce duel. They both rushed at each other. Izuku threw a punch at Inosuke, who dodged to the right and retaliated with a punch to Izuku's stomach. Izuku grunted in pain but smiled as he grabbed Inosuke's arm, kneed him in the face, and then tackled him. Inosuke slammed his elbow down on Izuku's back multiple times, but it was no use as he crashed into a tree. Izuku backed away slightly and began to punch Inosuke, who raised his arm in defense. As Izuku continued his rapid assault, Inosuke thought about how he was blocking most of the punches but felt the weight behind them and knew he wouldn't last long. He stopped blocking, grabbed Izuku's arms, and used the tree to launch himself forward, tackling Izuku to the ground. Inosuke placed his feet on Izuku's hands, ensuring he couldn't fight back, and started to punch him repeatedly in the face. Izuku struggled to move his arms but then bent the lower half of his body, wrapping his leg around Inosuke's waist and slamming him into the ground. Both pushed themselves off the ground simultaneously. They were covered in bruises and breathing heavily, but they had never had so much fun before. They ran toward each other, Izuku's right arm and Inosuke's left arm reared back. Just as they were about to throw their punches, they paused at the sound of a wolf howling in the distance. Quickly, Izuku and Inosuke grabbed their swords, sensing trouble, and rushed toward the source of the howl. Tanjiro yelled for everyone to watch out as he and the others moved aside, dodging a barrage of pink flower-patterned belts that crashed down, causing significant damage. A woman perched atop a tree laughed, relishing the chaos. Tanjiro, Nezuko, and Zenitsu struggled to protect their friends from the belts, which were difficult to avoid with so many people around. Tanjiro wondered how 𝗓𝗊𝗋 was even there, considering she had previously been defeated. The realization that they were all in danger weighed heavily on him as Setsuna, Towa, and Moroha prepared to attack 𝗓𝗊𝗋. 𝗓𝗊𝗋 merely smiled, taunting them as her belts flew toward them. They barely managed to block the attack, which sent them crashing into trees. 𝗓𝗊𝗋 then noticed Nezuko helping Izumi to her feet and sent a couple of belts their way. They couldn't react in time, and the belts loomed above them, ready to strike. As they braced for impact, Izuku intervened, declaring his attack and slashing the belts before they could reach Izumi. 𝗓𝗊𝗋, unfazed, launched multiple belts at Izuku, only for them to be cut into ribbons. Inosuke arrived, surprised to see 𝗓𝗊𝗋, questioning how she was still alive. Tanjiro insisted they needed to help Izuku, but Inosuke believed Izuku was strong enough to handle the situation, even suggesting he might be stronger than the god of festivals. The Shadow Wolf was busy evacuating everyone from the fight while the Light Wolf tended to the injured. Tanjiro wanted to stay and help Izuku, but the shadows prevented him from doing so. With only Izuku and 𝗓𝗊𝗋 remaining, 𝗓𝗊𝗋 taunted him, saying he would regret sending everyone away. Izuku lifted his sword, pointing it at her, and declared his longing for a fight. He squatted down and launched himself at her with incredible speed. 𝗓𝗊𝗋 barely managed to dodge his attack, feeling the sting of BLD on her cheek. Furious, 𝗓𝗊𝗋 retaliated by launching her belts at Izuku, who skillfully cut through them and attempted to close the distance. 𝗓𝗊𝗋 tried to attack him from behind, but Izuku dodged her strike. Meanwhile, back at the WWP headquarters, Izumi and the others were with the teachers, who were checking on them. Aizawa questioned the presence of Tanjiro and the other demon slayers. Izumi reassured him, explaining that they had helped them and that Izuku was currently fighting a demon. A massive explosion echoed in the distance, prompting Tanjiro to rush back, but the wolves blocked his path. He insisted he needed to help, explaining that 𝗓𝗊𝗋 was unlike any demon they had faced before. Izumi urged the wolves to let him pass, and they complied. Grateful, Tanjiro, along with Zenitsu, Inosuke, and Nezuko, set off to assist Izuku. Unbeknownst to everyone, the full moon shone brightly in the night sky, heralding an unforgettable event. Back with Izuku, 𝗓𝗊𝗋 leaped from branch to branch, searching for a strategic position to attack. However, Izuku was right behind her. As she jumped, he sliced off her legs, but she quickly regenerated and rolled away just as he attempted to stab her from above. 𝗓𝗊𝗋 felt a surge of panic as she realized the speed and skill of her opponent. He was cutting through her belts as if they were nothing, and he was closing in on her. She shouted for him to stay away as multiple belts lunged at him from all directions. Izuku, with determination, executed his technique, slicing through the belts effortlessly, which left 𝗓𝗊𝗋 in shock as he approached her. She prepared her own attack, summoning her belts to strike him down, but Izuku countered with a powerful move, spinning his sword and cutting through her defenses. In a blink, he was right in front of her, then vanished, leaving her disoriented. 𝗓𝗊𝗋 suddenly found herself on the ground, realizing too late that Izuku had outmaneuvered her. Just then, she heard footsteps approaching and saw Tanjiro and his companions arriving. Izuku pointed behind him, indicating the situation was dire. 𝗓𝗊𝗋, still alive but desperate, pleaded for help, revealing a strange presence emerging from her body. Izuku rushed forward to confront it, but it vanished before he could strike. A new voice broke through the tension, and Izuku turned to see a male demon with green hair, who radiated power. The female demon, 𝗓𝗊𝗋, was restored, and her brother glared at Izuku, vowing revenge for what had happened to her. Izuku growled in response, his eyes glowing with intensity as he prepared for the confrontation. Tanjiro instructed Izuku to handle 𝗓𝗊𝗋 while they dealt with J emphasizing the need to defeat them simultaneously. Izuku, with a fierce look in his eyes, declared that he would fight alone, unwilling to let anyone else become prey. J charged at him, wielding two sides, but Izuku met the attack with his own technique, causing the ground to crack beneath them. J taunted Izuku, reminding him that they were a team, and 𝗓𝗋𝗋 launched her belts at him from behind. With quick reflexes, Izuku leaped into the air, causing the belts to strike J instead, injuring him. Seizing the moment, Izuku grabbed Daki's belts and spun her around, using her own power against her. J𝗪𝗏 quickly regenerated and charged again, but Daki crashed into him, both of them furious and ready to retaliate. Izuku saw this as an opportunity and executed a swift attack, bringing his sword dangerously close to their necks. Just then, a new voice interrupted, and Izuku found himself trapped in a water prison created by 𝗧𝗏𝗁, who had arrived on the scene. Daki and j𝗪𝗏 stepped back, surprised by the sudden turn of events. 𝗧𝗏𝗁, intrigued by the battle, commented on their struggle, which only fueled their anger. Tanjiro and the others, witnessing the arrival of another upper-ranked demon, realized they needed to free Izuku and devise a plan to defeat their foes. However, 𝗧𝗏𝗁 summoned minions to keep them occupied, complicating their rescue efforts. Meanwhile, Izumi and her friends were waiting for the fight to conclude. Noticing the full moon, Izumi sensed something was amiss when fish-like monsters emerged from the bushes, heading toward them. She and her companions prepared for battle, charging forward to confront the creatures, hoping for Izuku's safety. Back with Izuku, 𝗧𝗏𝗁 expressed his intent to end Izuku's struggle, while Daki eagerly anticipated the chance to feast on him. As they unleashed their combined attack, Izuku closed his eyes, focusing his energy. When the attacks hit the water, he opened his eyes, revealing a newfound determination. With a powerful technique, he shattered his watery prison and countered their assault, surprising everyone around him. The clouds parted, revealing the full moon shining brightly above them, illuminating the area. As Izuku gazed at the moon, his heartbeat echoed loudly in the silence. The demons were poised to attack, but suddenly they froze, paralyzed by fear. Izuku dropped his swords, and his body began to transform. Bones cracked and his skin seemed to peel away, replaced by thick fur and spikes that erupted from his form. A chilling howl pierced the night, a sound that would haunt their dreams. Izuku turned, and the demons felt a primal fear wash over them, every instinct screaming for them to flee. In that moment, they realized they were nothing but prey in his eyes. No one dared to move as Izuku surveyed them. 𝗧𝗏𝗁 thought to himself in disbelief, questioning how this was possible, as they were the upper moons, the strongest demons under 𝗵𝗲. Izuku sniffed the air, his eyes widening slightly. In a blink, he vanished. Tanjiro searched for him, confusion etched on his face. Suddenly, a scream pierced the air. Daki cried out in pain as Izuku sank his teeth into her shoulder. j𝗪𝗏, enraged, launched himself at Izuku, ready to strike. Izumi dropped Daki, trembling, and turned to face j𝗪𝗏, preparing to unleash a BLD demon art. But before he could finish, Izuku swiftly incapacitated him with a powerful swipe of his claw. 𝗧𝗏𝗁, lurking behind Izuku, called out, reminding him not to forget about him. Izuku turned and leaped toward 𝗧𝗏𝗁, grabbing him and slamming him into a tree, which splintered upon impact. As Izuku examined his hand, he found remnants of 𝗧𝗏𝗁's skin. 𝗧𝗏𝗁, now transformed, boasted about witnessing his true form. Izuku snarled, dismissing 𝗧𝗏𝗁's bravado, asserting his strength. With a roar, Izuku charged at 𝗧𝗏𝗁, his claws slicing through the air. 𝗧𝗏𝗁 narrowly dodged, taunting Izuku about the sharpness of his claws. Meanwhile, j𝗪𝗏 struggled to regenerate, puzzled by his slow recovery. He glanced at Daki, who had changed entirely. 𝗧𝗏𝗁 unleashed a swarm of fish towards Izuku, but he slashed through them effortlessly, advancing on 𝗧𝗏𝗁, who trembled in fear. 𝗧𝗏𝗁 shouted in frustration, demanding Izuku to die, but Izuku lunged forward, barely missing him. 𝗧𝗏𝗁 smirked, believing the BLD in the air would be his advantage, but Izuku inhaled deeply, absorbing the poison and regenerating as he pierced his own chest, pulling out his lungs only to see them regenerate instantly. j𝗪𝗏, now behind Izuku with his sickles, shouted in anger about his sister. But before he could act, Izuku's spikes extended, piercing j𝗪𝗏 and sending him crashing to the ground with a powerful kick. 𝗧𝗏𝗁 attempted to flee, but Izuku was right behind him, spinning him around effortlessly before slamming him into the ground repeatedly. Finally, Izuku threw 𝗧𝗏𝗁 down with all his strength, pinning him beneath his foot. He dug his claws into 𝗧𝗏𝗁's chest, preventing any escape. 𝗧𝗏𝗁 struggled to use his tail, but it was futile. Izuku extended his spikes, holding Gyako in place as he bit into his neck, blood spraying forth. Izuku then tore at Gyako's body, relishing in the torment. Tanjiro and the others watched in horror as Izuku's claws glowed red, each slash searing Gyako's flesh. With one final strike, Izuku decapitated Gyako, his head rolling away and disintegrating into nothing. Meanwhile, Izumi shouted as Bakugo destroyed a pot, defeating another fish demon. Frustrated, Izumi noted the relentless onslaught of enemies. The students and teachers were running low on stamina, and Mina collapsed as a fish demon approached her. Just then, all the demon fish froze and began to vanish one by one. Aizawa questioned what was happening, and Kirishima speculated that Izuku had taken out the controlling demon. Izumi, confused, asked where they were going as the light and dark wolves pulled her into the shadows, heading toward Izuku. Back with Izuku, he ceased howling and turned towards the direction where he had kicked J`otaro. He soon stopped, finding J`otaro with his eyes closed, impaled by a tree branch, his body riddled with wounds as blood dripped into the ground. Izuku walked forward, and just as he was close enough, J`otaro opened his eyes and seized Izuku's arms. He thought of his blood demon art, rotating circular slashes, as his blood began to swirl around Izuku's arms, causing him to howl in pain. J`otaro wore a madman's smile, but that changed when he saw the anger in Izuku's eyes. Izuku gripped J`otaro's arms and pulled with all his might. J`otaro realized that Izuku was regenerating even as his blood art tore at his flesh. Soon, J`otaro felt his own flesh being pulled apart as Izuku exerted more force. In a moment of desperation, J`otaro attempted to counterattack, but it was futile. Izuku moved his arms forward, piercing through J`otaro's skull and the tree behind him, leaving the ground soaked. J`otaro was engulfed in agony as Izuku tore his body apart, his claws glowing red. Izuku hurled the two halves of J`otaro into the air, preparing to strike at his neck. As J`otaro's life flashed before his eyes, he realized that Izuku had severed his connection with his sister. Izuku howled in victory as J`otaro faded away, the sound echoing through the woods. Soon, Izuku returned to where Tanjiro and the others were. A scent caught his attention, and he turned to Nezuko. Tanjiro and Zenitsu positioned themselves in front of her, swords drawn and trembling in fear. In an instant, Izuku vanished from their sight, reappearing behind Nezuko and grabbing her. Tanjiro, recalling what Izuku had done to Daki, summoned all his courage to swing his sword at Izuku, who easily dodged and leaped back before attempting to bite Nezuko's neck. This time, it felt different, more gentle. They noticed Nezuko's body tremble, similar to Daki's, but before Izuku could proceed further, the shadow and light wolves appeared behind him and attacked, forcing him to release Nezuko. Izumi emerged from the shadows as well, and Izuku snarled at the wolves as they stood their ground. Izumi felt a headache as she took in Izuku's transformation and exclaimed in disbelief. Izuku charged at Izumi, who quickly dodged to the side. She asked him what had happened, keeping her distance as he swiped his claws at her. Izumi spotted Izuku's swords on the ground and picked them up, using them to block his claws as sparks flew from their collision. While defending against Izuku's attacks, he lunged forward to bite her, but she activated her full cowling and executed an axe kick to his head, halting his advance. Izumi wished for her mother's presence but knew it might be too dangerous. She focused on blocking Izuku's relentless strikes and called for help, warning that she would take drastic measures if they didn't assist her. The shadow and light wolves seized the opportunity, biting down on Izuku's legs, causing him to roar in pain. This distraction allowed Izumi to create some distance, but she noticed Tanjiro and the others frozen in fear. Determined, she rushed to them and urged them to move, insisting they needed to buy time until her mother arrived. Zenitsu expressed his doubts, recalling how easily Izuku had dispatched the upper demons. As Izuku caught a new scent, he sniffed the air and turned toward the camp. Izumi's heart sank as she realized he was about to run off. She ordered the others to stay behind and keep an eye on Nezuko while she prepared to slow him down. Activating her full cowling, she chased after him. Meanwhile, Tanjiro went to check on Nezuko while Zenitsu and Inosuke approached Daki, shocked by her transformation. They heard footsteps and drew their swords, recognizing a familiar voice. Tanjiro's eyes filled with tears at the sight. Izumi struggled to keep up with Izuku and noticed lights ahead. She braced herself, knowing it would hurt, and increased her percentage of one for all, finally catching up to him. She rammed into him, and they both tumbled to the ground, crashing into the area where everyone was gathered. The group was on edge, unsure of what had just happened, but when they saw it was Izumi, Ochako rushed to help her up. Izumi warned everyone to back away as Izuku rose, howling in his new form. Aizawa, concerned, asked if that was really Izuku. Izumi confirmed it was, expressing her wish for her mother's help while acknowledging the danger. Aizawa agreed, noting they were exhausted from battling the previous foes. Izuku then charged at them, and Izumi prepared to intercept him, but someone else beat her to it, a girl in the same uniform as Tanjiro and Zenitsu. She declared her attack, and as she struck, BLD sprayed from Izuku, who had multiple cuts across his body. Izumi took a closer look at the girl, realizing she was a fellow warrior. Izumi asked who Mitsuri Kenroji was, and she introduced herself, reassuring him that she hadn't harmed Izuku, only ensured he wouldn't pose any further threat. As they both evaded Izuku's rapid attacks, Mitsuri realized that the situation was more challenging than she had anticipated. Izuku, filled with rage, pursued Mitsuri, who skillfully used her sword to deflect his claws and managed to land a few cuts on him. Izumi urged Aizawa to help get all the girls to safety, explaining that he didn't have time to elaborate but needed him to trust him. Aizawa nodded in agreement. As Izuku noticed the women escaping, he turned to stop them. Mitsuri quickly intervened, using her technique to hinder Izuku's movements, but he swiftly regenerated, showing his resilience. His claws extended as he swiped at Mitsuri, who narrowly avoided the attack, watching as a nearby tree fell victim to his strength. Mitsuri acknowledged Izuku's surprising abilities just as Izumi, wearing a gas mask, leaped onto Izuku's back, struggling to maintain his grip while attempting to use his sword scabbard. He called out to Midnight, signaling that it was her moment to act. Midnight approached Izuku and activated her quirk, which began to weaken him. Just before collapsing, Izuku managed to throw Izumi off his back and grabbed Midnight, causing her to cry out in pain. Despite this, she maintained her quirk until Izuku finally succumbed and lost consciousness. After Izuku was subdued, he was encased in a special substance to prevent him from causing further chaos. Stronger restraints with quirk-canceling technology were applied, ensuring he was securely contained. The wolves stood guard, ready to intervene if necessary. Thanks to Recovery Girl, Nezuko, Midnight, and Daki were soon healed, though Daki remained restrained and unconscious. Tanjiro shared what had transpired during Izuku's rampage, noting that his actions had inadvertently saved lives. Mitsuri reflected on how Izuku's bite had transformed Daki, making her no longer smell like a demon. Jiro questioned why Izuku had bitten the others, and Nizu explained that he had researched werewolves, revealing that the alpha within Izuku had a primal urge to claim mates, which had been intensified by the presence of females around him. Nizu further clarified that the bites served as a mark of possession, binding those bitten to Izuku, with the only way to break the bond being the death of the one who marked them. Mitsuri expressed a surprising willingness to accept such a fate, prompting a moment of silence among the group. Mina inquired about the implications for those marked, and Nizu explained that they would experience an overwhelming urge until fully claimed. The girls exchanged glances, some intrigued by the idea of being marked, while the boys felt a twinge of jealousy toward Izuku. Present Mike asked about their next steps, and Nizu suggested they monitor the situation, agreeing to pause for the day as the wolves would alert them if anything occurred. Inko confirmed the plan, and they all settled in for the night, with Tanjiro and the demon slayers marveling at their surroundings. The following morning, everyone gathered for breakfast when Recovery Girl announced that the others were awake. Tanjiro and the demon slayers rushed to the infirmary with the teachers. Tanjiro joyfully embraced Nezuko, who responded with a shy greeting, her speech slightly halting, which surprised everyone and brought tears to Tanjiro's eyes. Daki soon regained consciousness, confused and frustrated by her restraints. She threatened the humans, attempting to use her powers, only to find them ineffective. As she questioned why her abilities were failing, the group realized that the mark Izuku had left on her prevented her from attacking those he considered part of his pack. 𝗎𝗍 confirmed Daki's demonic nature, while Tanjiro noted that she still bore some resemblance to a demon. When they showed her a mirror, Daki was shocked to see her human appearance, struggling to comprehend the transformation. Tanjiro speculated that Izuku's bite had somehow altered her, and as Inosuke opened the curtains to let in sunlight, both Daki and Nezuko instinctively shielded their eyes, bracing for the warmth. 𝗎𝗍 affirmed Tanjiro's theory, while Zenitsu scolded Inosuke for putting Nezuko in harm's way. "Wait, what should we do about her?" 𝗬𝗵𝗲 asked. 𝗎𝗍 replied, "She will stay with us, and since she can no longer harm us, do you agree?" The demon slayers nodded in agreement. Mitsuri added, "I see no problem with it, besides she is quite appealing." Daki, however, retorted, "Get away from me," as they removed her restraints. Midnight stirred awake, complaining about the noise in the morning. 𝗎𝗍 informed them about Izuku and the mark he left on them. Midnight expressed her concern, "If what you're saying is true, then what's to stop Izuku from doing exactly that?" 𝗬𝗵𝗲 reassured her, "For now, we have him sedated in a room far from the others, so there is no need to worry." Midnight felt relieved, saying, "That's good, now we know where he is." As Midnight used her quirk, Nezuko and Daki covered their faces while the others fell asleep. Unbeknownst to 𝗎𝗍, the effect of the mark grew stronger under a full moon and lasted for a day. The three of them made their way toward Izuku's location, determined not to let anyone stand in their way. Their ears began to elongate, and their teeth subtly sharpened as they transformed into something else. They soon encountered wolves guarding the door, realizing that was where Izuku was held. Midnight used her quirk to incapacitate them, while Nezuko and Daki tore down the door. Upon entering, they found Izuku restrained, and Daki used her belts to cut him free. Midnight urged them to leave quickly, saying they would be interrupted if they stayed. Daki carried Izuku as they ventured into the woods, seeking a place where they could be claimed by their alpha. Soon, all four of them were far away from the others, ensuring no one could track them. They found a suitable spot and began to prepare. Daki, feeling the urgency, breathed heavily as their scent reached Izuku's nose, waking him up. He stood up, gazing at the women he was about to claim, and reached for Nezuko, pulling her close. Nezuko wrapped her arms around Izuku's neck, feeling a rush of emotions as they shared a moment of intimacy. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation as they embraced. As they continued their journey, they were unaware of the challenges that awaited them. Back at the WWP headquarters, Izumi and Tiger arrived to find the wolves unconscious. Izumi checked on them, relieved to see they were merely asleep. However, she noticed the door had been forced open, and Izuku was nowhere to be found. Tiger contacted the rest of the WWP to ensure the female students were placed somewhere safe before meeting them in the infirmary to inform 𝗎𝗍. Mandalay asked what had happened, and Tiger explained that they had gone to see Izuku only to find him missing, with signs that someone had broken the door down from the outside. As they opened the door to the infirmary, they found 𝗎𝗍 and the others on the floor, having been gone for a while. Izumi shook them awake, and Mitsuri inquired about what had happened. Mandalay delivered the bad news that somehow Izuku had escaped. Aizawa added that Midnight had used her quirk on them. Izumi questioned why she would do that, and 𝗎𝗍 explained that she and the others were still under the influence of the bite and had already taken Izuku. 𝗬𝗵𝗲 insisted they needed to go after them, but 𝗎𝗍 warned that interrupting them during their mating would be dangerous. Present Mike asked what they would do, and 𝗎𝗍 decided they would wait at least a day before searching for them and that they needed to notify 𝐒𝐭. As everything returned to normal, the students trained while 𝐒𝐭 was informed about the situation, leaving her unsure of how to react. A full day passed, and the WWP and teachers set out to find Izuku, equipped with tranquilizers and careful to cover their scents. Izumi brought the wolves, who picked up a scent, but soon stopped moving. Izumi asked what was wrong, and Aizawa noted that it seemed they had split up. He instructed everyone to be careful and stay in touch as they separated, with Izumi and Aizawa going with the shadow and light wolves. As they checked their surroundings, they heard a twig snap and spotted Izuku in his werewolf form, carrying a deer. He noticed the wolves and, after a moment, turned and headed back, prompting them to follow quietly. Aizawa whispered that they had found Izuku and instructed them to track his location. They saw him enter a cave, and the rest of the group arrived. Present Mike asked for a plan, but Zenitsu had managed to escape his restraints and was heading toward the cave, yelling for Nezuko. The group felt a collective frustration at his recklessness. Izuku rushed out of the cave, locking onto Zenitsu, who realized he had made a mistake as he yelled for help. Aizawa directed the group to enter the cave, where they found Midnight, Nezuko, and Daki sleeping on a bearskin, which still bore traces of a recent kill. They sedated the three and covered them up before carrying them out of the cave with the help of the Shadow Wolf. Meanwhile, Zenitsu was running for his life as Izuku pursued him. Unfortunately, Zenitsu tripped and fell. As Izuku approached, his claws extended, but Zenitsu instinctively used his technique just in time to block the attack. Zenitsu expressed his anger at Izuku for taking Nezuko, but Izuku, consumed by fury, was quick to retaliate. Before Zenitsu could say more, Izuku was suddenly behind him, grabbing his head and slamming him down. Izuku then turned in the direction of the others, taking a powerful step that cracked the ground beneath him before he lunged forward, leaving a cloud of dust in his wake. Meanwhile, the others raced back to base, with Present Mike commenting on how things had gone better than expected, only for Aizawa to caution that he had jinxed them. They heard a loud boom and saw a large dust cloud in the distance. Aizawa urged everyone to keep moving as they heard Izuku howl, demanding the return of his mates. Just as they reached the base, Mandalay contacted Inko, who stood ready as she saw Izuku charging toward her. She took a deep breath and used her technique, commanding him to sit down. Izuku immediately obeyed, sliding to a stop just inches from her. Soon, everyone was outside, and Izuku remained seated. 𝗍𝗓 remarked that things had gone somewhat to plan as Tanjiro returned with Zenitsu, bound and taken to the infirmary. Izuku growled for his mates, but Inko reassured him that they had brought them back to ensure their safety and instructed him to return to his regular form, which he did. 𝗍𝗓 noted that they would need to implement the dorms sooner than anticipated. Izumi asked about Midnight and the others, and 𝗍𝗓 explained that Izuku and his mates would need to be on their floor. He then revealed a high-tech helmet that Mei had finished making. Inko inquired about the helmet as 𝗍𝗓 placed it on Izuku's head, explaining that it should help with the basics. However, smoke began to billow from the helmet, and it soon exploded. Inko and the others feared for Izuku's safety, but he stood up as if nothing had happened, expressing his confusion about the experience. Izumi noted that it seemed the device had worked. Soon, they returned to training, and Izuku was led to his friends, who were still sleeping, as the recovery girl checked on their status. 𝗵𝗲𝗄s expressed concern about All Might's recovery, wondering how he was doing. 𝗍𝗓 explained that while the girls were making their way towards Izuku, they had inadvertently disturbed All Might during his recovery, resulting in some injuries. As night fell, the students prepared for an exercise, unaware that trouble was looming. A group of individuals appeared on a cliff overlooking the WWP headquarters. The recovery girl suggested Izuku take a walk to get some fresh air, and he nodded in agreement, ensuring one of his wolves stood guard while he stepped outside. Feeling hungry, Izuku went to find something to eat, but as he sniffed the air, his eyes widened in alarm. He detected the scent of something burning and rushed out of the building, discovering that the forest was engulfed in blue flames. He quickly equipped his gear. Meanwhile, 𝗍𝗓 and the teachers were working to regain control of the situation. Present Mike speculated that it must be the League of Villains, questioning how they had discovered their location. Aizawa instructed 𝗵𝗲𝗄s to get Izuku inside while the rest of them dealt with the villains. Izuku, however, was determined to stand his ground, putting on his mask as he moved forward. He could hear the cries of the forest animals, their voices echoing through the trees as they pleaded for the fires to cease. Taking a deep breath, Izuku assumed a powerful stance, his muscles tensing with determination. He declared that he would not allow anyone to destroy his home or harm his pack, invoking a special technique that sent a chill through the air. The temperature dropped noticeably, and frost began to form on the trees around him. Nearby, Shoto and his sister shivered from the sudden cold, their breaths visible in the icy air. Suddenly, a colossal wolf of shimmering ice materialized behind Izuku, towering over him with glowing blue eyes and crystalline fur that sparkled like diamonds. In the depths of the forest, the League of Villains had gathered to plan their next move, but their focus shifted to the enormous wolf emerging from the shadows. Its mottled gray and black fur glimmered in the moonlight, and its eyes shone with an otherworldly intelligence. Fear gripped the villains as they fled, stumbling over roots and leaves, their adrenaline heightening their senses to the danger closing in. Izuku called out to the wolf, and its fierce howl echoed through the trees. The beast lunged forward, its claws extended, tearing into the earth as it moved. An eerie aura surrounded it, and everything in its path began to freeze, turning to solid ice. The villains found their escape blocked as the icy curse advanced, and within moments, they were encased in thick, clear ice, their expressions frozen in fear. The wolf's touch was unstoppable, sealing their fate in a frozen nightmare. Everyone watched in awe as Izumi glanced at her brother, noticing his body turning a pale shade of blue. Alarmed, she called out to him, but he suddenly collapsed, unconscious. They rushed to his side, and Izumi noted how cold he felt. At that moment, a pack of fierce wolves emerged from the shadows, swiftly surrounding Izuku to protect him. Understanding their instinctive gesture, Izumi quickly directed her friends to help. She urged Shoto and Shota to use their flames, while she asked Momo to create a thick, heat-absorbing blanket. Without hesitation, they activated their quirks. Shoto summoned a controlled stream of flames to create a protective barrier, while Momo crafted a large, dense blanket from reinforced fabric. They carefully wrapped Izuku, applying their combined powers to stabilize his body temperature. Nizu had half of the teachers head into the forest to apprehend the infiltrating villains, while the others remained to ensure no additional threats were present. Izuku lay in a bed, wrapped in a thick blanket with heaters beside him, connected to a monitor. Recovery Girl announced that his body heat was returning to normal, prompting Inko and Izumi to sigh in relief. Inko suggested they wait for the others to return, as the wolves would remain with Izuku until he woke up. They joined the others in a study room, where those who had struggled with their final exams were gathered. Meanwhile, 𝗵𝗲 and the team searched for those responsible for the attack, dressed in coats against the cold. Tiger expressed disbelief at Izuku's ability to freeze the entire area, while Mandalay inquired about the breathing technique Izuku had mentioned. Mitsuri confirmed that while breathing techniques were indeed used to combat demons, she had never witnessed anything like Izuku's power, which resembled a demon art. As they ventured deeper into the frozen forest, they spotted a light and prepared for a confrontation. To their surprise, they found 𝗬𝗲 using his quirk to melt the ice, alongside some villains who appeared to be trembling from the cold. Tiger commanded them to stop, but 𝗬𝗲 retaliated with a fire attack, forcing the heroes to dodge for cover. 𝗬𝗲 instructed a Nomu to keep the heroes occupied as it charged at them. The Nomu, with green skin and extra appendages that morphed into weapons, targeted Mitsuri. She stepped forward, taking a deep breath and unleashing her technique. The Nomu turned to attack her, but before it could strike, it was swiftly incapacitated, leaving everyone in awe. They quickly regained their focus and pursued the remaining villains, while some stayed behind to manage the frozen foes. 𝗬𝗲 and the other villains attempted to escape, but 𝗬𝗲 called for assistance through an earpiece, urging Kurogiri to extract them as the heroes closed in. 𝗵𝗲 declared they wouldn't let them escape and used his quirk to immobilize Magna. Just then, Kurogiri appeared, opening a portal for the villains to flee through. As the last one disappeared, Kurogiri vanished as well. Pixie Bob lamented their escape, but 𝗵𝗲 noted that they could still interrogate the captured villains. They brought the frozen villains back to camp, with Mitsuri effortlessly carrying one of the larger ones. The captured villains were high on the wanted list, and they placed quirk-canceling cuffs on them. Shoto and Shota worked together to melt the ice, ensuring Inko and Koda were kept in a separate room for their safety. 𝗵𝗲 informed them of the captured villains, while Nizu reassured them that the authorities had been notified. Koda, however, was restless and slipped out of the room, eager to see who had attacked the camp. Just then, Muscular lunged forward and seized Koda, while the heroes remained vigilant to protect him. Muscular threatened the heroes, asserting that he could easily harm 𝗂𝗳𝗏 without his quirk. He demanded his cuffs be removed, the release of the other villains, and a transport vehicle. As they prepared to uncuff the other villains, Muscular made an inappropriate demand, but the heroes remained resolute. Suddenly, a feral growl echoed behind him, and a shadow loomed over him. Before he could react, Izuku, transformed into his werewolf form, grabbed Muscular's face and slammed him into the wall. Izuku then released 𝗂𝗳𝗏, who ran to 𝗵𝗲𝗍 for comfort, while the other villains hastily put their cuffs back on. Izuku pushed Muscular's face deeper into the wall, crashing through another wall and outside, where he threw Muscular to the ground. Muscular, now free of his cuffs, faced Izuku, who challenged him to choose between fighting or being hunted. Muscular, realizing the stakes, prepared for a confrontation as muscle fibers began to coat his body. As the wolves arrived, Izuku instructed them to ensure the other villains did not attempt to escape, readying himself for the impending battle. Soon, the wolves arrived, and Izuku instructed everyone to ensure the villains did not escape. He was prepared to fight. Aizawa intervened, stating that 𝗂𝗳𝗏 was safe and they could handle the situation. Nizu explained that it was futile to reason with Izuku, as his instincts were driving him. According to the laws of nature, if one creature entered another's territory, conflict was inevitable. Muscular charged at Izuku, who closed his eyes and stood firm. Just as Muscular's fist approached, Izuku opened his eyes and deftly moved his head to the side, evading the punch. He then kneed Muscular in the stomach, causing him significant pain, and followed up with a headbutt that sent Muscular flying back. Muscular coughed, struggling to rise, confused about how he was being overpowered despite his strength. Izuku regarded him with disdain, stepping forward and swiftly moving behind Muscular. With a quick motion, he left claw marks across Muscular's chest. Enraged, Muscular turned to retaliate, but Izuku easily sidestepped and struck his leg. Muscular raged about his past encounters with heroes, vowing that Izuku would meet the same fate. As 𝗂𝗏𝗏 watched, tears streamed down his face, and he called out for his parents. 𝗵𝗲𝗍 comforted him, assuring him that they would be reunited soon. Muscular, realizing 𝗂𝗏𝗏 was the child of the heroes he had harmed, threatened him, but Izuku, in a moment of fierce determination, incapacitated Muscular further. Izuku's speed overwhelmed Muscular, who struggled to keep up. He was soon sent crashing into a tree, leaving a trail of destruction. Muscular's vision blurred as he attempted to crawl away, but Izuku advanced, causing him to cry out in pain. The others urged caution, fearing for 𝗂𝗏𝗏's emotional state. 𝗂𝗏, remembering his parents' smiles, clenched his fists and made a resolute decision to ensure Muscular would never harm anyone again. 𝗵𝗲𝗍 continued to comfort him as Izuku released Muscular, stepping back to allow the others to check on 𝗂𝗏𝗏. Aizawa directed everyone to secure Muscular and ensure he was contained. Suddenly, Muscular made a desperate lunge at 𝗂𝗏𝗏, but 𝗵𝗲𝗍 shielded him. When she turned around, everyone was stunned to see Izuku's arm had pierced Muscular's chest. He withdrew his arm, leaving Muscular's body to fall lifelessly to the ground. Izuku tossed Muscular's heart to the wolves, who eagerly claimed it, causing some onlookers to turn away in disgust. Izuku returned to his normal demeanor, warning the remaining villains not to make the same mistakes as Muscular. He then walked back into the building, the wolves following closely behind. Nizu and the others began cleaning up the area, placing the villains in makeshift cells. The atmosphere was tense, as none dared to provoke Izuku, fearing a similar fate. In a separate room, Inko and Aizawa discussed the recent events. Aizawa expressed his concerns about Izuku, suggesting that this was not the first time he had taken a life. The atmosphere shifted, heavy with the weight of their conversation. Aizawa noted the shift in the atmosphere, expressing his belief that this was not the first time someone had been killed by the individual in question. Inko acknowledged Aizawa's implication but reminded everyone that they knew little about his time alone and the challenges he faced, including the incident with Muscular. Nizu reassured her that given the circumstances, there would be no issues. Inko sighed in relief and asked if they had tried talking to him. Aizawa confirmed that they had, but the boy seemed hesitant to open up. Just then, Present Mike entered the room, announcing that one of the villains wanted to make a deal. Nizu inquired about which villain it was, and Present Mike revealed that it was a girl named Toga Himiko. When asked if she had stated what she could provide, Present Mike replied that she insisted on speaking directly with them or she wouldn't talk at all. Nizu agreed to meet with her, and Present Mike informed them that she was restrained in a separate room, thanks to 𝗵𝘃𝗍𝗵𝗲. As they entered the room, they saw Toga, her hands and feet encased in 𝗵𝘃𝗍. Nizu took a seat across from her, while Aizawa and Inko remained alert. Nizu asked Toga about the deal she wanted to propose. With a smile, Toga confirmed her intention to negotiate. Aizawa questioned why they should trust her and the information she could provide. At that moment, the door opened, and a man in a trench coat entered. It was Detective 𝗕𝗄𝗍𝗳, who apologized for the delay and expressed his eagerness to hear what Toga had to say. Toga interrupted, demanding assurance that she would receive what she wanted. Inko asked what she desired, to which Toga replied that she wanted to see the boy with green hair who had been covered in 𝗵𝘃𝗍. This revelation surprised the group, prompting them to huddle together for a brief discussion. 𝗕𝗄𝗍𝗳 suggested they agree to Toga's request, reasoning that she posed no threat while restrained and that Izuku could handle himself. Upon returning to Toga, Nizu agreed to her terms, stating she could see Izuku after sharing what she knew. Toga revealed that she was a member of the League of Villains and explained her quirk, which allowed her to transform into anyone by drinking their 𝗵𝘃𝗍𝗳. Aizawa interrupted, clarifying that they wanted more than that information. Toga then explained that they had come to recruit the Bakugo twins, as Shigaraki believed they could be turned into villains based on their behavior at the sports festival. As for the location of the other villains, Toga mentioned they were at their hideout in Kamino Ward, Yokohama City. Just as she was about to answer the last question, another villain threatened her, prompting Aizawa to swiftly use his scarf to subdue the threat, knocking the villain out. With the immediate danger handled, Aizawa pressed Toga for the identity of the mole who had informed them about the location. Toga revealed that it was a mole planted at UA, which shocked everyone. Inko demanded to know the mole's identity, but Toga refused, insisting that she had answered 3 questions and expected them to uphold their end of the deal. Nizu asked 𝗕𝗄𝗍𝗳 if Toga's information was credible, to which 𝗕𝗄𝗍𝗳 confirmed it was. Nizu proposed that if they brought Izuku to her, she might reveal the traitor's identity. Toga considered this for a moment before responding non-committally. Inko was then instructed to bring Izuku, and as she opened the door, she found him standing right outside with Izumi. Inko explained that a villain wanted to see him as part of a deal. Izuku pointed at Toga, curious about her. Toga remarked that he would look even better covered in 𝗵𝘃𝗍𝗳, while Izumi sought clarification from Inko about the situation. As they discussed how to extract information from Toga, they failed to notice that Izuku had opened the door to her cell. Suddenly, he bit down on the left side of Toga's neck. Izumi rushed to intervene, pulling Izuku away from Toga. Aizawa was taken aback, and Izuku explained that he thought he was marking her as a mate. Nizu, trying to find a silver lining in the situation, noted that at least they might finally get some answers. Soon, they turned around to see Izuku biting down on the left side of Toga's neck. Izumi rushed toward Izuku, pulling him away from Toga and out of the cell. Aizawa questioned Izuku's actions, and Izuku explained that he thought Toga wanted to be his mate, so he marked her. Nizu found a silver lining in the situation, believing they could now get some answers. Toga then shared everything they wanted to know while cuddling with Izuku. Aizawa pressed her for the name of the traitor, and Toga struggled to remember, mumbling names until she finally said Aoyama. Izumi asked why, but before anyone could respond, they felt a chilling presence from Izuku, whose eyes glowed with rage. He declared that Aoyama was responsible for the destruction of his home and would face consequences. As Izuku headed for the door, Toga pointed out that Mustard had threatened her earlier, leaving him visibly shaken. Izuku promised to deal with Mustard after addressing Aoyama. Inko attempted to intervene, hoping to calm Izuku, but he continued out the door with Toga. Mandalay's voice echoed in his mind, instructing Aizawa to keep Izuku away from Aoyama. Izumi, feeling the urgency of the situation, fought against the overwhelming intent to stop Izuku and followed him. Outside, everyone was preparing their meals again. Denki wondered what would happen next, while Kirishima suggested they might head back to UA. Suddenly, they sensed a wave of bloodlust emanating from the building. Mandalay used her quirk to contact the others, and 𝗵𝗵𝗲 quickly gathered everyone, warning them that Izuku was after Aoyama. He instructed everyone to extinguish the fires and get inside, urging Aoyama to come with them. Before they could react, Izuku burst through the wall, flanked by his wolves and mates. He called for Aoyama, declaring it was time for judgment. The heroes positioned themselves protectively in front of the students. 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗲 asked Izuku what was happening, and he accused Aoyama of being responsible for the destruction and betrayal of the pack. Present might question the accusation, and Aoyama stood silent, looking down. Toga confirmed Izuku's claims, stating Aoyama had revealed their location to the attackers. The revelation left everyone speechless. Bakugo tackled Aoyama, demanding the truth. Aoyama, tears streaming down his face, confessed his guilt. As Izuku inhaled deeply, the tension escalated. He announced it was time for Aoyama to pay, preparing to strike. Bakugo quickly released Aoyama, and the others froze, unable to move as Izuku aimed his blade at Aoyama. Just as the blade was about to make contact, Izumi launched herself at Izuku, tackling him away from Aoyama. They stood facing each other, Izuku still filled with bloodlust. Izumi argued that while Aoyama's actions were wrong, he didn't deserve to die. Izuku countered that Aoyama would only bring more harm. Izumi insisted they might need Aoyama's information to stop the League, and they didn't know his reasons. Izuku challenged her, questioning if she would stand in his way. Izumi declared she would, stating that if he wanted to kill Aoyama, he would have to go through her. Mandalay attempted to intervene, but the twins shouted that this was their fight. The atmosphere shifted, and everyone present would remember the confrontation that night, a battle that would determine Aoyama's fate. They locked eyes, a silent intensity hanging in the air. Izuku carefully slid his swords back into their sheaths, and the Shadow Wolf prepared for the clash. The onlookers held their breath, the atmosphere charged with anticipation. A gentle breeze swept through, and a solitary leaf drifted down, signaling the impending duel. In an explosive moment, they launched forward. Izuku drew back his right arm while Izumi coiled her left, the moment suspended in time. Their fists collided with a resounding crack, the force echoing through the ground. Dust erupted around them, swirling in a wild display as the wind blasted outward, framing their fierce determination. Though both siblings were pushed back slightly, they continued to exchange rapid punches. Onlookers marveled at how Izumi managed to keep up with Izuku, their fight escalating with each blow. Unknown to them, Izumi was using her telekinetic quirk to strengthen her body, allowing her to utilize one for all more effectively in her confrontation with Izuku. As they exchanged punches, Izumi manipulated a log with her telekinesis and pulled it toward them. When Izuku turned around, Izumi delivered a punch to his back, causing him to stumble as the log collided with him, sending him flying across the field. Izuku quickly got back up, unfazed by the attack, and declared that it would take more than that to defeat him. He charged at Izumi, who raised her hand to uproot a tree and a large amount of rock, clapping her hands together to send the objects crashing toward him just as he approached. Izumi's eyes turned red, and she breathed heavily, feeling the pressure building within her. She thought about how she needed to hurry, realizing that the overwhelming force was becoming difficult to manage. Just then, Izuku broke free from his restraints, transforming into his fearsome werewolf form. He unleashed a powerful punch aimed at Izumi, landing squarely on her stomach. An intense wave of pain surged through her, and the force of the blow sent her crashing backward into a nearby tree, disorienting her as she tumbled to the ground. As Izuku approached, Izumi struggled with blurry vision and ringing ears. She thought about how careless she had been, relieved that she had managed to protect her stomach at the last second, but the pain was still overwhelming. Determined to fight through it, she rolled onto her stomach and attempted to stand, though it proved difficult. With Izuku now behind her, he raised his arm and brought it down, but Izumi dodged the attack just in time. Summoning all her strength, Izumi channeled one for all and her telekinesis into her right fist, delivering a punch to Izuku's chest. The pain was unlike anything she had experienced before. her right arm darkened with strain, but despite the agony, she pushed through and sent Izuku flying across the field, crashing through several trees. Izumi cried out in pain while clutching her arm, struggling to remain conscious. One of the students wondered if it was over, but another quickly admonished him not to jinx it as they watched Izuku struggle to rise, a hole visible in his chest that began to heal almost immediately. He then vomited BLD and fell to his knees, looking at his sister, both injured but refusing to back down. Pixie Bob urged the others to intervene, sensing the situation was becoming dire, but Midnight and the others held them back. Just then, Inko appeared above them, commanding both Izuku and Izumi to calm down. She slammed her fist down, causing them to crash to the ground, unconscious. Everyone was left speechless by the scene they had just witnessed. Inko ordered them to take the siblings to the medical room, and her command was met with immediate compliance. As Izuku's friends picked him up, others assisted Izumi while 𝗵𝗲𝗄 apprehended Aoyama, reminding him that he had much to answer for. 𝗲𝗬 remarked on Inko's impressive intervention, to which she replied that she had not wanted to hurt her children but felt it was necessary. 𝗲𝗬 then suggested they see what Aoyama had to say for himself. In a dimly lit room, 𝗲𝗬, Naomasa, and several teachers prepared an interrogation space, transforming the sterile environment into one charged with tension. Aoyama sat in a chair with quirk-canceling cuffs, his gaze fixed on the cold metal table before him. Aizawa broke the silence, urgently asking why Aoyama had betrayed Yue, but Aoyama remained silent, his eyes cast downward. Naomasa leaned closer, a mix of concern and frustration evident in his demeanor. He warned Aoyama that he could share his secrets now or face the consequences later. Taking a shaky breath, Aoyama finally met their gaze, his eyes red from recent tears. He murmured that he did not want any of this to happen but felt he had no choice. He confessed that he had acted to keep his parents safe from a looming threat. When pressed for details, he revealed that it was all for one who had put them in danger. The gravity of Aoyama's revelation shocked 𝗲𝗬 and Naomasa. Naomasa demanded to know Aoyama's connection to All for One and where he could be found. 𝗲𝗬 intervened, urging Naomasa to allow Aoyama to continue. With a nod, Naomasa stepped back, regaining his composure. Aizawa encouraged Aoyama to share more, and Aoyama confessed that he had once been quirkless. He explained that his parents had made a dark deal with All for One to grant him a quirk, requiring him to enroll at UA and act as a spy. Each word he spoke was heavy with anguish, reshaping their understanding of betrayal and loyalty. The room fell silent, the tension palpable as everyone processed the weight of Aoyama's confession. Aoyama's expression was haunted as he asked what would happen to him now. 𝗲𝗬, ever the strategist, replied with a calm but concerned demeanor, stating that first, they needed to ensure Aoyama's parents were safe. Aoyama abruptly shook his head, panic igniting in his eyes. He pleaded desperately, fearing that if they went after his parents, the antagonist would know he had talked and would put them in danger. 𝗵𝗲𝗄 leaned forward, his brow furrowed with concern, questioning what they would do next. 𝗲𝗬 contemplated the situation, tapping his finger against his chin thoughtfully. He suggested there might be a way to extract them without the antagonist finding out, a glint of determination sparking in his eyes as he took a sip of his tea, savoring the moment while grappling with the impending danger. The stakes had never been higher, and Aoyama felt the suffocating weight of his choices pressing down on him. Inko sat in the dimly lit medical room, surrounded by her daughters-in-law and the gentle presence of the healing wolves. Her gaze shifted to the resting figures of Izuku and Izumi, who were nestled on cots nearby. Thanks to the attentive care of the healing wolf, Izumi's injured arm now appeared as good as new, its former suffering nearly forgotten. The atmosphere was thick with tension when the door creaked open. Inko turned to see 𝗲𝗬, the wise but enigmatic principal, and Aizawa, the stoic teacher, entering the room. She rose from her seat, her heart pounding with a mix of hope and concern. Inko instructed that they should let her know if the children woke up, her voice steady yet laced with apprehension as Midnight gave a reassuring nod. Inko's mind raced with questions, prompting her to press onward. She asked how the encounter went. 𝗲𝗬 and Aizawa exchanged glances before recounting the details. As the story unfolded, 𝐒𝐭 felt a surge of anger welling inside her, triggering her quirk. Suddenly, time seemed to freeze. Objects in the room hung midair for a heartbeat before cascading down, clattering to the ground. Taking a deep breath, she focused on calming herself, knowing that maintaining control was crucial. 𝗏𝐭 asked how they would handle the situation, her voice firm despite the swirling emotions within her. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 replied that he had a plan but would require Izuku's assistance. 𝗏𝐭 frowned slightly, the weight of the situation pressing heavily on her. She stated they would have to wait since both children were still unconscious, and even then, Izuku might want to confront Aoyama. She promised to talk to him and see what he decided. Just then, the door swung open once more, and midnight peeked in with an energizing spark in her eyes, announcing that the children were awake. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 expressed urgency, motioning for them to enter the room. The air buzzed with anticipation as they prepared to face whatever revelations awaited them. Izuku murmured, confused about what had just happened, rubbing the sore spot on his head. Beside him, Izumi sat up, glancing down at her arm with wide eyes, marveling at how it was no longer injured. Their mother, 𝗏𝐭, stood a short distance away, her expression a mix of concern and relief. She explained that they could thank the healing wolf for mending Izumi's arm, gesturing toward the majestic white wolf sitting loyally beside her. Izuku knelt down and softly stroked the top of the wolf's head, praising it and earning a few jealous glances from the other wolves surrounding them. 𝗏𝐭's voice, though firm, was infused with worry as she surveyed the aftermath of their reckless scuffle. She questioned what they were thinking, fighting like that. The children exchanged sheepish glances and flinched slightly at their mother's tone. 𝗏𝐭 continued, emphasizing that Izuku had gone too far. She reminded him that while he had been alone for many years, he could not decide who lived and who died while under her care. Turning to Izumi, she expressed concern about her pushing herself and her quirk to the limit, warning that she could have ended up in much worse shape if 𝗏𝐭 hadn't intervened. 𝗏𝐭's voice softened slightly but still held authority as she stated that this would be the first and last time such behavior occurred, her gaze piercing through both of them as they remained silent, the gravity of her words sinking in. 𝗏𝐭 reiterated her question, demanding to know if they understood. Both Izuku and Izumi responded affirmatively. 𝗏𝐭 then shifted the conversation to Aoyama, prompting 𝗧𝗵𝗲 to share the same information he had given her. Izuku declared that if he found Aoyama, he would face him in battle. Izumi eagerly expressed her willingness to join. Aizawa interjected, noting that 𝗧𝗵𝗲 had a plan but would need one of the wolves. Izuku understood that they wanted to use the Shadow Wolf quirk to ensure Aoyama's parents' safety, and 𝗧𝗵𝗲 nodded in agreement. Izuku then stated that he would agree to the plan, but he had conditions. He expressed a longing for a private room for himself and his friends, both at the current location and when they returned to UA, and he requested not to wear the uniform, preferring to wear what he wanted. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 assured him that the first request was easily arranged and that he would ensure no one would disturb them. He also mentioned plans for dorms when they returned to UA. The second request was also no problem, and 𝗧𝗵𝗲 asked if there was anything else. Izuku replied that he couldn't think of anything at the moment but would let him know later. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 decided to let them rest and left the room. Izuku sat up and began to pull off the cords restraining him. 𝗏𝐭 questioned where he thought he was going. Izuku explained that he had promised someone in a cell he would deal with him for how he treated Toga. 𝗏𝐭 firmly stated that he was not going to kill him. Izuku then asked if he could at least break a few of his bones. 𝗏𝐭 reluctantly agreed, allowing him to proceed but warned him not to cause any life-threatening injuries. In a different room, Aizawa watched alongside Toga as Izuku confronted Mustard. Mustard pleaded for help, but Izuku continued to deliver powerful punches, knocking a few of Mustard's teeth out in the process. Aizawa expressed his frustration, stating that he would intervene if he could, but his hands were tied. Izuku, undeterred, seized Mustard's right arm and began to bend it backward. Mustard pleaded for mercy, begging him to stop, but Izuku remained resolute. A sickening crack echoed through the room as Mustard cried out in pain, yet Izuku was not finished. He grabbed Mustard's left leg and applied the same pressure, leaving Mustard in agony. Once he was done, Izuku tossed Mustard back into his cell. Toga approached Izuku and expressed her gratitude with a kiss on the cheek, thanking him for his actions. Aizawa reminded them that he needed to get mustard treated, but Izuku suggested letting him suffer for a while longer before healing him. Aizawa sighed in resignation, agreeing to monitor the situation closely. As they prepared to leave, Aizawa mentioned that a room was ready for them and provided the location. Izuku thanked him and departed with Toga, who whispered playfully about wanting to be claimed by her alpha. Izuku lifted her and headed toward the room, but as they approached, he heard a voice from inside. Curiosity piqued, he quietly opened the door, only to find 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗏 in a compromising position. Toga wore a mischievous smile as they both took in the scene before Izuku quickly closed the door. Unaware of their presence, 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗏 continued her activities, lost in her own world. Izuku and Toga decided to join in, shedding their clothes and entering the room. Izuku snuck up behind 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗏, surprising her. He teased her about having fun and suggested they join her. Caught up in the moment, 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗏 surrendered to her desires, and they shared a passionate kiss. Izuku shifted his focus, moving his hand lower, but he stopped just as 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗏 was about to reach her peak. He offered her a choice, teasing her with the prospect of something more. 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗏 eagerly laid down, inviting him to take the next step. Izuku obliged, and the atmosphere was charged with excitement as they lost themselves in the moment. As they continued, Toga watched with anticipation, eager for her turn. After a while, Izuku shifted his attention to Toga, who climbed on top of him, reveling in the connection they shared. They moved in sync, each lost in their own pleasure, until they reached a crescendo together. Once they were spent, Izuku covered them with a blanket, but the moment was interrupted by the sound of the door opening. Midnight and the others entered, and Izuku could sense their intentions, a smirk forming on his face as Daki closed the door behind them. As Izuku entered his room, a wave of warmth enveloped him. His companions lounged comfortably in the spacious bed, their faces reflecting contentment. The soft morning light filtered through the curtains, illuminating their serene expressions. Clad only in snug shorts, Izuku stretched and let out a satisfied yawn, shaking off the remnants of sleep. After taking in the peaceful scene, he turned to close the door behind him. However, before proceeding, Izuku noticed something unusual at the threshold, a solid chunk of ice, glimmering in the light, with Mineta encased within it, his eyes wide in shock. Chuckling softly to himself, Izuku approached the frozen figure. He reached down and gently patted the head of Shadow, his shadow wolf, whose dark fur shimmered as if absorbing the light around it. He affectionately praised Shadow, instructing him to take Mineta to the old lady, reminding him to take his time. Understanding the command, Shadow nodded, as if grasping the importance of the task. With a soft bark, he lowered his head slightly, preparing for the journey, ready to carry Mineta away at a leisurely pace, leaving Izuku to enjoy the tranquility of the moment. Izuku grabbed his sword and stepped outside, the early morning sun slowly rising. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and released it, focusing his mind. When he opened his eyes, he conjured a misty image of Gyako, who summoned a multitude of pots from his hands, the openings aimed at Izuku. Gyako unleashed a swarm of fish from the pots, and Izuku inhaled deeply. He then executed a swift move, using his technique, as he swung his swords rapidly in a circular motion, repelling the attack. Izuku charged forward, slicing through the fish as he closed the distance, now directly in front of Gyako. With a decisive swing, he unleashed a powerful strike, cutting through the air and ending the confrontation. Afterward, he sheathed his swords, casually remarking that if Gyako wanted to be sneaky, he should have hidden his scent, without turning around. It was then that Koda emerged. Izuku turned to face Koda, crouching down to the boy's eye level. He playfully asked what Koda was watching him for. Koda, feeling defensive, insisted he was not a pup. Izuku chuckled at the boy's indignation and prompted him to answer the question. Koda fidgeted under Izuku's gaze, anxiety flickering in his eyes as he expressed his longing to be strong like Izuku. As silence fell between them, Izuku studied the young boy, sensing the weight of his insecurities. He gently pressed for a reason behind Koda's aspiration. Koda, taken aback, repeated his wish to be strong. Frustration crept into his voice as he clenched his fists, insisting that he just wanted to be strong. Izuku, thoughtful, suggested that training his quirk would be the best way forward. Standing up straight, Izuku prepared to walk away, but Koda quickly positioned himself in front of him, determination burning in his eyes. He insisted that he wanted to be like Izuku. As several other students emerged from the building, their laughter and chatter created a backdrop for the intense exchange. They paused, curious about the unusual conversation taking place between Izuku and the younger boy. Izuku reiterated his question, leaning slightly closer to Koda, who responded with frustration, questioning why he needed a reason. Izuku sighed, contemplating the situation. He offered Koda until the end of the day to think of a reason, promising to train him if he liked it. Koda's cheeks puffed in anger, and with a defiant shout, he stormed off, leaving Izuku with a mix of amusement and concern as he watched the boy walk away to gather his thoughts. Izumi approached Izuku, curiosity evident in her eyes. She expressed her surprise at his willingness to teach someone. Izuku paused, a thoughtful expression crossing his face as he explained that anyone taking on the role of a teacher must have their own reasons. Denki, eager to contribute, asked about Izuku's reason. Without changing his direction or looking back, Izuku quietly stated that it was to survive as he moved away from them. The moment was thick with a mix of emotions as everyone turned their attention back to Denki, who felt a pang of regret for having questioned Izuku, realizing too late that some topics were better left alone. A silence enveloped the group, each lost in their thoughts about Izuku's stark response. The night had settled over the trading camp, casting shadows that danced ominously in the dim light as Izuku Midoriya, his heart pounding with anticipation, prepared for the mission ahead. He stood alongside the enigmatic Shadow Wolf, whose presence exuded an air of both mystery and strength. With focused determination, Izuku meticulously sharpened his blades, the glinting steel reflecting the faint light around them. Each slide of the sharpening tool was deliberate, a ritual that fueled his commitment to the task at hand. Nizu, the astute and strategic headmaster, gathered the heroes in their makeshift command center, where a buzz of anxious energy filled the air. He turned to Izuku, his expression serious yet encouraging. He explained the plan to get as close as possible to Aoyama's parents' location. Once they confirmed it was secure, Izuku and the Shadow Wolf would make their way to them and bring them back. Izuku nodded, his determination unwavering. To calm his nerves, he plucked a single strand of his green hair, holding it between his fingers for a moment before running it along the sharp edge of his blade. The hair was severed cleanly in two, a testament to the lethal sharpness of his swords. Satisfied with the result, he sheathed his weapons, each satisfying click echoing the seriousness of their mission. Izuku felt a surge of confidence as he prepared for the challenge ahead. Aizawa instructed him to follow, and Izuku nodded, his heart racing with anticipation and determination as they approached the vehicle parked nearby. Outside the building, Inko stood anxiously, her eyes filled with concern. She urged him to be careful, her voice trembling slightly. Izuku reassured her with a small smile before climbing into the van. The engine roared to life, and they drove away, the cityscape blurring past as they ventured deeper into their mission. 3 hours later, they arrived at a well-concealed hideout, strategically located near Aoyama's parents. The atmosphere was tense as the team prepared for the rescue. Edge, one of the seasoned heroes, had confirmed their presence in the area. While Izuku was focused on saving Aoyama's parents, the other heroes were gearing up to storm the League of Villains hideout. The thrill of action tugged at him, but he knew he had committed to accompanying the Shadow Wolf and could not abandon that responsibility. Nizu instructed Izuku to get ready, his voice clear and authoritative despite the weight of the situation. As soon as they cut the power, that would be his cue. Izuku nodded, determination etched on his face. Nizu raised a hand to signal, and in an instant, the house was engulfed in darkness. With adrenaline surging through his veins, Izuku and the Shadow Wolf moved seamlessly into the shadows, their movements precise and practiced. Inside the house, Aoyama's parents were startled by the unexpected blackout, panic setting in as they exchanged bewildered glances. Their cries of fear pierced the stillness just as Izuku emerged from the darkness, pulling them into the shadows with him. Without hesitation, he led them back to the van, emerging alongside them just as another hero slammed the door shut behind them. Aoyama's mother stammered in confusion and fear, but 𝗎𝗠 quickly assured them that the important thing was that they were safe. Just then, a violent jolt rocked the van. They had been struck by something heavy. Aoyama's father panicked, fearing for their lives. One of the heroes shouted that they had a 𝗨𝗵𝗲 on their tail. Izuku opened the door, peering out at the creature barreling after them, running on all fours with terrifying speed. Without hesitation, the shadow wolf sprang from the van, its powerful jaws snapping at the 𝗨𝗵𝗲, causing it to tumble to the ground. Izuku urged everyone to go ahead, adrenaline surging through him as he leaped out of the van to confront the threat directly. The hero at the wheel pressed 𝗎𝗠 for instructions, concern etched on his face. 𝗎𝗠 ordered them to keep driving, emphasizing that they couldn't stop now. Within the shadows, Izuku and the shadow wolf stalked the 𝗨𝗵𝗲, unrelenting. Suddenly, the creature was struck by a passing car, sending it careening off the side of the road. But the 𝗨𝗵𝗲 quickly regained its footing, displaying resilience. Izuku and the shadow wolf seized the moment, bursting forth from the shadows to confront their foe. Izuku taunted the 𝗨𝗵𝗲, a confident smirk on his lips as it charged at him. He grounded his stance and unleashed his technique, slicing through the 𝗨𝗵𝗲's form. As the dust settled, Izuku turned, ready for further combat, only to realize the 𝗨𝗵𝗲 lay still, not moving at all. Frustrated, he muttered that he thought these creatures were tough and returned to the shadows with the shadow wolf, trying to catch up with the van and continue their mission safely. Izuku's heart raced as he climbed back to the top of the van, the cool night air swirling around him. Beside him, the shadow wolf stood alert, its keen eyes scanning the environment for any sign of trouble. They had been entrenched in a daring rescue mission, but a sense of urgency pulled at them, reminding them of the chaos unfolding in Kamino Ward. Meanwhile, far away, the rest of the heroes were gearing up for the raid. 𝗕𝗫𝗫, the ever-reliable warrior, took the lead, igniting a fiery spirit among the team. Despite Recovery Girl's protests about overextending herself, she worked tirelessly to mend 𝗕𝗫𝗫's wounds, knowing that their chance of success hinged on his strength and resolve. One of the heroes spoke into his earpiece, informing 𝗎𝗠 that they were beginning the raid. The tension was palpable as the heroes prepared to take action, each aware of the stakes involved. Back at WWP headquarters, 𝗎𝗠 and the others were on their way back, their minds racing with plans and strategies to support their comrades in the field. After what felt like an eternity, they arrived at the familiar grounds of the headquarters. As Izuku and the shadow wolf leaped gracefully from the top of the van, they landed softly on the concrete below. Moments later, Izuku was enveloped in warm embraces. 𝗏𝗏 rushed forward, her eyes brimming with pride and relief. Beside her stood Izumi, beaming as well, their joy evident despite the chaos surrounding them. The van door swung open, and a flurry of heroes stepped out, their cheerful shouts cutting through the tension in the air. Among them were Aoyama's parents, who stood anxiously at the back of the group. The instant Aoyama spotted them, his face lit up with elation. Ignoring everything else, he dashed toward his family, wrapping his arms around them in a tight hug that conveyed his immense love and gratitude. The atmosphere, while still heavy with the weight of their mission, began to shift towards one of comfort and reunion, underscoring the bonds forged through their trials together. 𝗎𝗠 tried to maintain a sense of optimism in the room, expressing that they just had to wait for some good news from the raid team. Just as he finished speaking, 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗏 burst through the door, her expression frantic and urgent. She informed them that there was a problem with 𝗕𝗫𝗫𝗫, who was in a fight with someone incredibly powerful and struggling. Everyone quickly gathered around the nearest television, where the screen flickered to life, revealing 𝗕𝗫𝗫𝗫 in the center of a chaotic battle scene. He stood bravely, albeit visibly battered, facing off against a formidable opponent. The man wore a finely tailored suit, his face obscured by a menacing mask that amplified his intimidating presence. The atmosphere in the room grew heavy as Izumi's voice broke the silence, realizing that it was AFO. The weight of despair settled on everyone as they watched 𝗕𝗫𝗫𝗫's struggle intensify. Izuku's heart raced, a storm of fury and frustration building within him as he witnessed AFO overpowering 𝗕𝗫𝗫𝗫. The sheer audacity ignited a primal rage within him, sending shivers through those nearby. Izuku growled through clenched teeth, his fists trembling at his sides, expressing his anger at AFO's actions. The other heroes in the room exchanged concerned glances, an unspoken understanding passing between them. They could feel the tension in the air, knowing that Izuku was about to do something reckless. As if sensing that time was running out, the others reached out, desperate to restrain him, but it was too late. With fierce determination driving him, Izuku called upon the power of the Shadow Wolf, his familiar ally. In an instant, both he and the Shadow Wolf dissolved into the darkness, melding into the shadows that swirled around them, racing towards the battlefield where AFO and shit might clashed. "Izawa," exclaimed, his voice tinged with urgency and concern, that they had a serious problem on their hands. Izuku was on his way to Kamino Ward, and they could not let him confront All for One under any circumstances. He took a deep breath, knowing how high the stakes were. The threat posed by All for One was immense, particularly because of his ability to steal quirks. If he managed to get hold of Izuku's quirk, the resulting power would make him nearly invincible. Aizawa's mind raced with strategies and possible interventions as he ordered everyone to do whatever it took to stop Izuku. The battle at Kamino Ward raged with unprecedented ferocity as the echoes of destruction reverberated through the air. Buildings trembled and crumbled under the colossal clash of powers, leaving the once bustling cityscape in ruins. Amidst this chaos, All Might stood resolute, his muscular form a beacon of hope as he faced off against his most formidable foe, All for One, a villain whose reputation for chaos preceded him. As they exchanged powerful blows, AFO taunted All Might, revealing that Shigaraki was the grandson of his beloved Nana Shimura. The revelation struck All Might like a thunderbolt, igniting a torrent of emotions within him, shock, sorrow, and a swelling rage that threatened to consume him. He roared in denial, his voice booming over the chaos, the very ground trembling beneath him. The intensity of his emotions fueled his power, and he prepared to unleash his full strength against AFO. Yet AFO was not finished, relishing the turmoil he had sown, and continued to mock All Might, stating that he was also the one who shaped his life into the tragedy it was now. As AFO's words hung in the air, the gravity of their implications settled heavily upon All Might's shoulders. The battle intensified, each combatant pushing beyond their limits, their confrontation now infused with the personal stakes of their shared history. The fate of their legacies loomed over them as they fought not just for victory, but for the very ideals they represented. All Might, filled with fury, lunged toward AFO, drawing back his arm, muscles coiling with the last remnants of his power. He unleashed a punch, powerful enough to shatter the air around him. In a startling display, AFO mirrored his movement, and their fists collided, sending a massive shockwave rippling through the area, reverberating like thunder and shaking the very ground beneath them. All Might strained to push through the immense pressure, but he could feel the weight of exhaustion bearing down on him. Time was slipping away, each second a reminder that the once vibrant embers of One for All were steadily fading. All Might found himself staggering back, his immense strength momentarily compromised as he collided with the remnants of a collapsed building. The debris crumbled around him, dust swirling in the air. He could feel the ominous energy radiating from AFO, who was gathering his power for an air-based attack. All Might's instincts kicked in, and as he glanced over his shoulder, he spotted a woman trapped amidst the wreckage. Her eyes widened in fear, and a sense of urgency washed over him. He realized that any attempt to evade the imminent strike could jeopardize her safety. His heart raced as he weighed his options, knowing he couldn't allow her to be harmed, even at the risk of his own well-being. AFO declared that it was the end, preparing to unleash his devastating attack, as the air crackled with tension and the ground trembled beneath him. But just as he was about to strike, a flash of green surged forward. Izuku Midoriya appeared, fury burning in his emerald eyes. He declared that it was not going to happen, his voice resolute and fierce. With a swift twist of his body, he unleashed a powerful kick aimed directly at All for One's head. The force of the blow was tremendous. It shattered the villain's helmet into jagged pieces, sending shards flying through the air. 𝗓𝗨 was launched backward, unable to brace himself as he hurtled toward the nearest building. The impact was catastrophic. He crashed into the structure with immense force, causing the entire facade to crumble around him, debris raining down like a torrential storm. Flames flickered to life amidst the rubble, illuminating the chaos. The once mighty villain was buried under the fallen bricks and smoldering debris, scorched by the heat and force of his own arrogance. All Might looked at the young hero with concern, his usual confident tone replaced by worry. Izuku stood before him, determination radiating from his tense posture. All Might noticed the stark contrast. While he was in his muscular form, most others around them appeared to be in their normal states, the atmosphere thick with tension. Izuku turned his back to All Might, his voice resolute, stating that this was no longer All Might's fight and that he was taking over. He gestured with a swift motion, signaling to a shadow wolf lurking nearby. The shadow wolf emerged from the darkness, prowling towards All Might and a nearby woman who looked on in disbelief. All Might protested, straining to rise to his feet, but it was too late. The encompassing darkness surged forward, wrapping around him and the woman, pulling them into its depths. Desperation flashed in his eyes as the shadows engulfed them, leaving Izuku standing alone, the weight of the impending battle heavy on his shoulders. Izuku knew that his kick wasn't enough to finish 𝗓𝗨 off, so he called out for him to come out and face him. There was an unsettling silence, and he noticed the lack of movement from the debris-strewn area. Determined, he took a combat stance, grounding himself firmly as he prepared for whatever might come next. He declared that it would be done his way and drew on his training, focusing his energy. He executed a series of intricate movements, unleashing powerful air projectiles that sliced through the air like sharp blades. With a resounding crash, the projectiles raced toward the already collapsed building, leaving deep slash marks on the ground where they had passed. Suddenly, 𝗓𝗨 emerged from the rubble, his figure outlined against the chaos. He deftly evaded Izuku's attack, the dust and debris swirling around him as he narrowly escaped the deadly onslaught. The battlefield was charged with tension, an unspoken challenge hanging in the air between them. 𝗓𝗨 complimented Izuku's skills and offered him a tempting proposition, suggesting that if he joined him, he could have anything his heart desired, even some quirks. Izuku lunged towards 𝗓𝗨 with incredible speed, barely giving him time to dodge. He moved his swords forward, almost making contact with 𝗓𝗨's body, expressing his intent to confront the villain who had tried to kill him. 𝗓𝗨, realizing the determination in Izuku's eyes, prepared to retaliate. He launched an attack with red and black tendrils aimed at Izuku, who did not bother to dodge. Izuku swung his swords around him, cutting the tendrils apart. He then ran towards 𝗓𝗨, slicing through the remaining tendrils and preparing for another strike. As he stood before 𝗓𝗨, he raised his blades over his head and performed a downward slash. 𝗓𝗨 countered with an air bullet, hitting Izuku just as his blade was an inch from making contact, sending him flying through the air and crashing into a ruined building. Izuku burst forth from the debris, his wound healing almost immediately. His determination ignited like a flame. And particles swirled around him as he emerged, wiping the remnants of the battle from his brow. He was acutely aware that time was of the essence. He had to move swiftly and hit with unrelenting force. With a focused mind, he inhaled deeply, feeling the energy surge within him. As he began to semi-transform, a wave of power coursed through his body, and wolfish ears sprouted from his head, twitching as they picked up distant sounds of chaos. A sleek tail emerged, swishing behind him, while patches of soft fur adorned his arms and shoulders, enhancing his primal instincts and agility. His senses heightened, Izuku stood poised to strike, ready to unleash his fury once more against his opponents. 𝗓𝗨, realizing the shift in the battle, amplified his abilities, his right arm now giant and equipped with metal weapons. Izuku charged at him, ready to attack, but he appeared behind 𝗓𝗨, delivering multiple cuts across his body. 𝗓𝗨 grappled with disbelief, struggling to comprehend the impossibility of the situation. Frustration bubbled within him as he coughed, swinging his left arm in a wide arc, aiming to land a blow on Izuku. But with remarkable agility, Izuku sidestepped the attack, his movements fluid and instinctive. He seized the opportunity and delivered a powerful knee strike directly to 𝗓𝗋's face. The impact sent 𝗓𝗋 reeling backward, struggling to regain his balance, the force of the hit echoing in his ears. Izuku's battles against 𝗓𝗋 dominated social media, sparking discussions and excitement among fans and spectators alike. His classmates rallied behind him, their encouragement echoing through the screens. Izumi exclaimed with fervor as she glanced over at her mother, 𝗵𝗄, feeling a mixture of pride and relief wash over her. 𝗵𝗄 watched her son with a heavy heart but a glimmer of hope, acknowledging that they had much to discuss once this was all over. An unspoken understanding lingered between them. Both were aware of the weight of 𝗂𝗄's actions and the toll they had taken on their family. His confession about the darkness he had inflicted upon Izuku and the pain it caused their loved ones loomed in the back of their minds. Meanwhile, Izuku's female allies were fiercely committed to protecting him, championing his strength and resilience as he faced off against 𝗂𝗄. Watching him tap into his full potential and demonstrate incredible power ignited a spark within them. As he pushed through the fierce combat, excitement rose among them, anticipating his triumph and imagining the moments they could share with him once he returned victorious, a celebration of their bond and a reward for the struggles he had endured. 𝗕𝗄 fought to regain his footing, trembling as the impact of Izuku's assault coursed through him. Pain radiated from every part of his body, leaving him feeling weaker than he had anticipated. With a grunt of effort, he staggered backward, his strength wavering. As he pushed himself up again, Izuku's voice sliced through the air, dripping with mockery. A fierce anger ignited within 𝗂𝗄, the embers of his rage fanning into flames as he glared at his opponent, determined not to be belittled. 𝗂𝗄 struggled to his feet, each breath coming in ragged gasps, clearly feeling the toll of their fierce confrontation. He declared that the battle was far from over and warned Izuku that if he were 𝗧𝗵𝗲 of his weapons, the outcome would be very different. Izuku stared defiantly at his opponent, a fire burning in his emerald eyes, and challenged 𝗂𝗄 to put that theory to the test. With a swift motion, he drove his sword into the ground, sending a slight tremor through the earth. He cracked his knuckles, preparing for the next phase of their intense duel, ready to engage 𝗂𝗄 once more as the weight of their struggle electrified the atmosphere around them. 𝗂𝗄 finally straightened his posture, and the effects of his healing quirk mitigated his injuries. He activated his other quirks with sharp focus, honing in on Izuku's presence. A wicked smile spread across his face as he charged at Izuku, drawing back his enormous fist, a shadow looming over him. The moment 𝗂𝗄's massive hand slammed into Izuku's body, the sheer force sent him hurtling backward. Izuku barely managed to twist his body to avoid crashing into a nearby building, but the impact was still severe enough to knock a tooth loose. Gritting his teeth against the pain, he surged forward, fueled by determination and adrenaline. In an explosive burst of speed, Izuku closed the distance between them, launching himself at 𝗂𝗄. With sheer resolve, he unleashed a powerful punch into 𝗂𝗄's stomach, lifting him slightly off the ground as he gasped in surprise. Seizing the moment, Izuku followed up with a swift roundhouse kick to 𝗂𝗄's face, the strike connecting with a sound that reverberated in the air, sending 𝗂𝗄 sprawling to the side. 𝗕𝗄, enveloped in a swirling aura of black and red energy, extended his tendrils deep into the earth. With a sudden, forceful motion, he anchored himself firmly in place, the ground trembling beneath him as he prepared for his next assault. Gathering power, he unleashed a formidable shockwave that propelled him toward Izuku with incredible speed. Sensing the imminent threat, Izuku steadied himself, channeling his energy as he braced for impact. He reared back his right arm, muscles coiling with tension, and launched a powerful punch as 𝗂𝗄 swung his left arm in a mirrored attack. The moment their fists connected, the force erupted in a massive shock wave radiating outward, shaking the air around them and sending debris flying in all directions. The clash marked a fierce encounter between two titans, each determined to overpower the other. At that moment, a devastating blow struck Izuku's right arm, subjected to immense pressure that caused his muscles to strain. The force unleashed by 𝗂𝗄 sent Izuku reeling, propelling him backward with incredible speed. He crashed into a nearby building, which could not withstand the impact. The structure crumbled around him, leaving him trapped beneath a torrent of debris. The sharp edges of bricks and the heat from the flames engulfing the ruins worsened his situation, leaving him in a precarious position. 𝗵𝗃 declared that he was not finished yet, a menacing glint in his eyes as he unleashed his tendrils toward the shattered remains of the building. They snaked through the air before plunging into Izuku's body, leaving him suspended momentarily as he gasped in pain. 𝗵𝗃 raised his fist above his head, muscles coiling like a spring, and brought it crashing down with force onto Izuku. The impact sent shockwaves through the ground, creating a small crater around him as he crumpled under the weight of the blow. 𝗵𝗃 loomed ominously over Izuku's battered body, a cruel smirk on his face. He taunted Izuku, lifting him off the ground by his hair to bring their eyes level. The power imbalance was palpable, as 𝗵𝗃's dark aura seemed to smother the air around them. He sneered, asking if Izuku had any last words, his eyes glinting with the thrill of his anticipated victory. In a surprising twist, Izuku's fingers tightened around 𝗵𝗃's wrist with a grip that was startlingly strong. The energy coursing through him had reached an explosive peak. Izuku realized he needed to take the situation more seriously. His voice remained calm and steady despite the dire circumstances. Suddenly, the transformation began. His skin seemed to peel away like fragile paper, revealing a new and powerful form beneath. Thick fur emerged, cascading over his body, shimmering with an ethereal glow in the dim light. His physique altered dramatically, muscles rippled under the surface as his frame elongated and shifted, becoming more agile. His hands and feet morphed into wolf-like extremities, claws extending and slicing through the air. As the transformation reached its peak, Izuku's face contorted, reshaping into that of a wolf, eyes fierce and predatory, reflecting the fiery resolve within him. It was a striking image of raw power and determination, signaling that the battle was far from over. Izuku felt adrenaline coursing through his veins as he tightened his grip around 𝗓𝗋's wrist. A surge of pain shot through him, a sharp reminder of the difference in their power, as 𝗵𝗃 attempted to break free. With a grunt of effort, Izuku summoned all his strength, forcing 𝗵𝗃 down to his knees. Taking a deep breath, he prepared to retaliate. He drew back his right arm, muscles coiling like a tightly wound spring, and unleashed a powerful punch. The impact was jarring. A shockwave echoed through the air as his fist collided with 𝗵𝗃's jaw, sending Izuku staggering back a few feet. He challenged 𝗵𝗃, reminding him of his earlier boast about being unbeatable. 𝗵𝗃 sensed the tide turning against him. The formidable power Izuku wielded threatened to overwhelm him. In an instant, 𝗵𝗃's cunning mind began to devise a new strategy. He cast his gaze to the side, spotting an unassuming woman nearby, unaware of the imminent danger. With a sinister smile, 𝗵𝗃 raised his left arm, deliberately aiming it away from Izuku, who instinctively turned to see what had caught 𝗵𝗃's attention. In that split second, 𝗵𝗃 seized the opportunity and launched dark tendrils toward the woman, arms extending like shadows ready to ensnare her. Before the tendrils could reach their target, however, Izuku's instincts kicked in. He lunged forward with incredible speed, placing himself protectively in front of the woman just as 𝗵𝗃's tendrils struck him with brutal force. The sharp agony flared throughout Izuku's body, a grim reminder of the stakes at hand. Even in pain, he couldn't allow himself to falter. He needed to protect those around him, even at a significant cost to himself. 𝗵𝗃's voice dripped with malice as he smirked, revealing his intent to take Izuku's quirk. As he stepped closer, the weight of his intent filled the air like a storm cloud. Izuku struggled against the tendrils that had ensnared him, their cold grip immobilizing his limbs at the joints and rendering him nearly helpless. The world around them blurred into insignificance as 𝗵𝗃 reached out, his fingers curling around Izuku's head once more. A cold shiver ran down Izuku's spine, a mix of dread and determination washing over him. He could feel 𝗵𝗃's overwhelming presence invade his mind, an all-consuming darkness that threatened to drown him. 𝗃 found himself deep within the recesses of Izuku's mind, his gaze fixed on Izuku standing defiantly before him. He declared that this was where it would end, boasting that once he took Izuku's quirk, no one could stop him. Izuku met his threat with a confident smile, asserting that they would see about that. 𝗂𝗄's laughter faded abruptly, replaced by a sneer. Suddenly, everything around 𝗂𝗄 warped and shifted, plunging him into a desolate landscape unlike anything he had ever encountered. The emptiness stretched endlessly, a barren wasteland devoid of life. Just as confusion began to settle in, a primal growl shattered the silence, sending a shiver down his spine. A rattle of chains echoed ominously, reverberating in the stillness. As 𝗳𝗄 sensed something and flicked upward, his heart raced for the first time in his life. Real fear gripped him. Towering above him was a colossal wolf, its size dwarfing him. Its eyes glowed with an intensity that resembled a seething inferno, fierce and unyielding. A sword was embedded in its mouth, and from the wound, magma-like BLD dripped down, seeping into the ground and causing it to sink under the weight of its heat, accompanied by a menacing hissing sound. Suddenly, 𝗳𝗄 felt a stark contrast as warmth surged through his right side, while an eerie chill enveloped his left. He turned to both sides in a panic, spotting two more wolves advancing toward him. One was a fearsome creature of ice, exuding an aura so cold it felt capable of freezing his very soul. The other, a soul-burning behemoth, could incinerate everything to cinders. The ground beneath them was caught in a relentless battle, one side scorched by flames while the other lay encased in frost, each wolf drawing nearer with a menacing intent that sent tremors of dread through 𝗂𝗄's core. 𝗂𝗄 stammered in disbelief and horror, realizing that what stood before him were not mere manifestations of abilities, but terrifying beings whose sole nature was destruction. This wasn't a battle he could win. As the weight of the situation pressed down on him, he felt a primal instinct to flee overpowering his thoughts. He turned to escape, but it was too late. No matter how fervently he strained against the confines of Izuku's mind, he was trapped, ensnared in a labyrinth of his own making. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. Just before Izuku's smooth yet ominous voice broke through the tension, an unsettling calm settled. He declared it was time for the wolves to feast, a twisted smile creeping across his face. In an instant, the dark figures surged forward, their eyes gleaming with hunger and malice. They lunged at 𝗂𝗄, a cacophony of growls and howls resonating as they descended upon him. As the wolves began their assault, 𝗂𝗄 felt a flurry of despair wash over him, realizing he was facing a force far beyond his comprehension. There was no escape from the horde. He was now prey in a merciless chase orchestrated by the very mind he had underestimated. As he felt the sharpness of their teeth, he realized the danger he was in. Izuku focused intently on the figure before him, jolting with the realization that it wasn't all for one, but someone else entirely. His heart raced as he scanned the surroundings, quickly spotting 𝗂𝗄 in the distance, frantically attempting to make his escape. He shouted, urging 𝗂𝗄 to back up his threats with action. With a sharp whistle, he summoned the attention of the three massive wolves that stood by his side, their ears twitching as they turned towards him. With a determined glare directed at 𝗂𝗄, the wolves responded to his call, letting out a resounding howl that echoed through the landscape. In an instant, they darted into action, sprinting after 𝗂𝗄 with fierce speed, their powerful legs propelling them like arrows as they pursued their quarry. 𝗕𝗄 mused about his dire situation, urgency lacing his thoughts. The ominous power wielded by others was a threat that could not be allowed to remain unchecked. He plotted his escape, knowing that once he broke free and returned to the physical realm, he would eliminate Izuku, who posed a threat to his plans. Just as he schemed, a chilling sound pierced the stillness, the howling of wolves echoing through the shadows. Their haunting calls sent a shiver down his spine, making it clear they were on his trail, relentless and hungry for the chase. Before he could gather his thoughts or formulate a plan, he felt the pack drawing closer, their predatory instincts honed in on him. Time was running out, and he knew he had to act swiftly before they closed in. The ice wolf sprang forward with alarming speed, its sharp fangs bared as it clamped down on 𝗂𝗄's waist. A piercing scream erupted from him as the frigid tendrils of ice rapidly encased him, spreading across his body like a relentless winter storm. Each second felt like an eternity as he struggled against the suffocating grip of the frost, feeling the warmth being sapped from his limbs. In a desperate bid to escape his icy fate, 𝗕𝗏𝗄 made a harrowing choice. He summoned the remnants of another entity, an unfortunate soul from whom he had stolen a quirk. This sacrifice was not just an act of desperation. It intertwined their fates in a dark dance of power and survival. As the icy grip tightened, he focused his will, knowing that only through this sacrifice could he hope to break free from the clutches of the ice wolf lurking around him. With a fierce howl, the fire wolf lunged forward, its flames licking hungrily at the air as it felt the heat consuming its entire form. In a desperate bid, it sacrificed another entity to the inferno, a soul extinguished instantly. As the wolf wielding the sword and 𝗕𝗏𝗄 stood together, they shared an unspoken understanding. If 𝗕𝗏𝗄 fell into the wolf's grasp, there would be no escape from destruction. 𝗕𝗏𝗄 swiftly acted amid the chaos, sacrificing more entities scattered like ashes in the wind, creating the distraction he desperately sought. This fleeting moment of chaos allowed him to break free as the wolves devoured the remnants of the sacrificed entities, their growls echoing ominously. Izuku watched from the sidelines, his heart heavy with the knowledge that this battle was far from over. With a determined resolve, he faded away from the mindscape, his intentions clear. He would confront the fire wolf in the physical realm, where the actual test of power and will awaited. While Izuku was in a fierce battle against 𝗕𝗏𝗄, All Might and the others were nearby, positioned at the edge of the battlefield near the shadow wolf. The shadow wolf dragged them out from the shadows with its dark, smoky tendrils, revealing their trembling figures. The heroes quickly moved towards them, guiding the civilians away to safety. Meanwhile, Gran Torino approached Yagi with a hurried yet apologetic expression. He expressed regret for blaming Yagi for what happened to Izuku and questioned why he hadn't defended himself all this time. All Might remained silent for a moment, a somber expression on his face, before slowly standing up. He promised to explain everything once the battle was over, but right now he needed to return. Izuku needed help. One of the heroes, watching the intense battle unfold between Izuku and 𝗕𝗏𝗄, expressed awe at how easily Izuku was overpowering 𝗕𝗏𝗄 with sharp and precise moves, demonstrating incredible bravery and skill. Yagi, also known as All Might, struggled to process the astonishing sight before him. Suddenly, 𝗕𝗏𝗄 unleashed a devastating dark energy blast aiming directly at Izuku, whose quick reflexes allowed him to narrowly evade the attack. In that moment, they saw 𝗕𝗏𝗄 reach out with his twisted, glowing hand and place it on Izuku's chest. All Might and Gran Torino instantly recognized 𝗕𝗏𝗄's sinister intention to steal Izuku's quirk. Without hesitation, they rushed toward them at full speed, determined to protect their young hero and prevent 𝗕𝗏𝗄 from succeeding in his malicious plan. Once they arrived alongside other heroes, the group prepared themselves for the impending battle, their expressions tense with determination. Suddenly, they caught sight of 𝗕𝗏𝗄 releasing Izuku with a frantic surge of desperation. 𝗕𝗏𝗄 shouted in panic, ascending into the sky while attempting to activate his warp quirk. However, nothing happened. The usual shimmering glow accompanying his powers was absent. A flicker of realization crossed his face as he remembered the wolves had devoured his quirk earlier, stripping him of that ability. As images of the wolves tearing through his powers flashed in his mind, 𝗕𝗏𝗄's thoughts raced, but his mind was clouded with fear and frustration, leaving him unable to think clearly or formulate a plan. In that moment, everyone noticed Izuku standing confidently, seemingly unfazed by the chaos around him. Suddenly, a shadowy wolf materialized before Izuku, wielding a pair of gleaming swords that caught the dim light. Izuku swiftly gripped the blades, taking a prepared stance, his muscles tensing in readiness. He inhaled deeply, drawing in the cold, crisp air, as the haunting howl of a wolf resonated through the night. Simultaneously, the shadow wolf and a pack of other wolves at the WWP headquarters responded, unleashing a chorus of mournful howls that echoed across the landscape. The reporter noted the unusual situation, observing that the villain who fought All Might seemed to be fleeing, while the person battling him had taken a defensive stance. Izumi and the others watching the fight on TV understood what was coming next. Shoto quickly dialed his father, who was in the science lab, and after a few rings, Endeavor finally answered. Showdown urgently insisted that he needed to evacuate the entire area immediately. 𝗵𝗲𝗏, concerned, asked what he meant. Showdown explained that they didn't have much time. Izuku was about to unleash a massive, destructive attack, and if they stayed, they would be in grave danger. 𝗵𝗲𝗏, knowing Showdown would never exaggerate, sensed something was wrong and agreed to take action. Showdown glanced at his father through the car window and added that paramedics should be ready to assist Izuku as soon as he finished his attack. Showdown and his guardian, 𝗧𝗪𝗏, rushed through traffic in a sleek black sedan, heading swiftly toward their destination. As 𝗵𝗲𝗏 hung up, he turned to look at Izuku in the back seat and felt an oppressive wave of intense heat emanating from him. The ground beneath them began to glow with a crimson hue, and flickering embers and small tongues of fire emerged from the earth. Izuku confidently announced his attack, his voice echoing through the chaos. 𝗵𝗲𝗏 and the other heroes hurriedly evacuated the area, positioning themselves safely in anticipation of what would come. Suddenly, a towering figure materialized, a colossal wolf composed entirely of flickering flames. Its massive form loomed over the cityscape, radiating overwhelming heat. The surrounding buildings and terrain were engulfed in a blazing inferno, and the intense heat distorted the air. The ground shimmered under the fiery onslaught, creating rivers of molten rock that flowed sluggishly away from the beast's feet. It was an apocalyptic scene of destruction etched into the memories of all who witnessed it. Izuku swung his sword with determined force, and the fiery wolf roared fiercely, its body blazing with intense flames. It began running upward, unleashing a fiery trail across the sky like a comet. Afo froze in terror, sensing the fire wolf's overwhelming heat and ferocious presence. The air thickened with smoke, making each breath difficult. His clothes ignited, sparks flying as they caught fire. In desperation, Afo witnessed the wolf open its maw wide, then suddenly shut it with a deafening snap, trapping him inside. Flames erupted around him, transforming him into a blazing silhouette, and he cried out as the flames consumed him, leaving a trail of smoke and ash in the air. Izuku's last words were a fierce declaration before he lost consciousness. 𝗵𝗲𝗏 swiftly appeared, lifted Izuku into the air, and felt an intense heat emanating from him, hotter than he had ever experienced. Despite being immune to heat, 𝗵𝗲𝗏 endured the pain as he flew toward the paramedics and gently set Izuku down. However, Izuku's body continued to generate heat, and 𝗵𝗲𝗏 knew that if this persisted, Izuku's life would be at serious risk. Suddenly, Izuku's body was encased in a thick layer of ice, but the ice quickly melted away as his body temperature normalized. 𝗵𝗲𝗏 turned around to see his wife, who nodded in response. The paramedics approached and carefully placed Izuku onto a stretcher before rushing him into the ambulance. Just then, they heard a loud crashing sound as Afo's charred body hit the ground with a heavy thud. The heroes hurried over to the body, which was smoldering and burned beyond recognition. Some heroes were conflicted. While Izuku had defeated Afo, he had also killed him, leading many to look away out of fear and respect for Izuku's strength. At that moment, the medic approached to take Afo's body to the morgue for processing. As the medical team prepared to document the death and move the body, they suddenly observed Afo's corpse twitch faintly, causing a surge of fear among them. One medic, driven by suspicion, quickly moved to check behind the damaged facade, reasoning that with the extensive damage Afo had sustained, it was unlikely he could still be alive. The medic carefully listened to Afo's chest and detected the faint, steady sound of a heartbeat. Realizing the implications, he signaled the medical team to assist. They hurriedly transported Afo to the hospital, accompanied by a group of heroes who remained vigilant. Time passed, and Izuku lay in a hospital bed, his body wrapped in bandages from recent injuries. An intravenous drip was connected to his left arm, slowly delivering fluids to assist his recovery. A monitor beside the bed displayed his vital signs, providing real-time updates to the medical staff. Inko, Izumi, and Izuku's friends were present in the room with the wolves, as Nizu successfully negotiated with the hospital staff to allow their presence. The white wolf began to use its quirk on Izuku, emitting a faint, healing glow that enveloped his body, which started to shimmer slightly. At that moment, they heard a knock on the door, signaling Aizawa's arrival. He announced that Yagi was there, prompting Inko and Izumi to exchange glances and quietly exit the room. Inko asked to be informed when Izuku woke up, glancing at midnight, who gave a reassuring nod. Aizawa guided them to a secluded room where no one could intrude, revealing Yagi sitting at a table covered with bandages and a cast splint on his right arm, indicating he had sustained injuries. Nizu, accompanied by several heroes, was present in the room as well. Inko and Izumi took their seats, maintaining a quiet atmosphere. After a moment of silence, Nizu broke the stillness by addressing the group, asking if anyone had questions regarding Izuku. Endeavor immediately raised his hand and responded sharply, expressing his longing to understand what had just happened. Nizu explained that they had no idea what it was, noting that it was not a quirk and that a similar phenomenon had occurred at the training camp. He described it as a wolf made of ice, capable of freezing anything that came into contact with it. Present Mike added that everyone had witnessed Izuku's display of power, and while some were afraid of him, he was more concerned about the hero committee. He feared they might concoct a bureaucratic excuse to send Izuku away or confine him. Nizu reassured them that even if the committee decided to take action, Izuku would not comply with their rules, and they likely did not want to provoke him. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to Yagi, Inko, and Izumi. Inko, her voice trembling with emotion, questioned Yagi about his silence regarding the past events. She expressed her frustration, revealing that they had blamed him for Izuku's fall and that he had never defended himself despite the pain he had endured. Yagi took a deep breath, burdened by regret, and finally met Inko's gaze with a pained expression. He explained that they needed someone to blame and that he understood the grief of losing someone important. He had felt overwhelming sorrow and helplessness, and he could not bear for them to experience that same pain. So, he chose to take on the role of the villain, believing he had failed as a father. He had thought Izuku had died because of him, and out of guilt, he allowed their sadness to transform into anger directed at him, accepting it as his punishment. Inko, tears streaming down her face, unexpectedly slapped Yagi across the cheek, shocking everyone in the room. Her voice trembled as she expressed her frustration, reminding him that they had needed him too. Yagi, visibly stunned, looked down at the cluttered table before him. Izuku, stepping out from the shadows of the hallway, gently placed a hand on Inko's shoulder and urged her to calm down, explaining that Yagi had acted according to what he thought was best. Izumi, standing nearby, expressed concern for Izuku's well-being, reminding him that he should be resting after everything he had been through. Izuku nodded calmly, affirming that he had rested and was now present. He admitted he was unaware of what had transpired in his absence but stood by his father's side. He acknowledged that sadness could lead people to make unexpected choices and emphasized the importance of mending their fractured family.